to school, we're actually the second educators in your children's life because you are the first teachers. And we want to work in partnership with all of you because we can't do this work alone.
Su voz cuenta y que si nos unimos podemos lograr grandes cosas para nuestros hijos.
I love the diversity of the school district. Whether you know it or not, this district speaks 83 different languages.
To know that the administrative offices, they have my back. Not only my back, but they have my child's back.
Every child, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of income.
Welcome to the October 19th meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Hui?
Here.
Ms. Larrett?
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
All are here tonight. Thank you.
All right. We will be going into closed session on any of the following matters: student matters, employer-employee relations, conference with legal counsel regarding litigation, conference with real property negotiators, and personnel matters. Before we go into closed session, is there any public comments on items that will be discussed in closed session? Online? All right. We will be at recess until 6 p.m. sharp, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Welcome to the October 19th meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education. If you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have a broadcast statement. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, and/or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comments during board meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. All written comments submitted by 3 p.m. today to the board have been read. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Milledor?
Here.
Mr. Merrill?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Hui?
Here.
Ms. Larrett?
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
All are accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Item 5, reporting out of closed session. Superintendent?
Yes, the board took action in closed session and unanimously approved an agreement with a management employee in exchange for resignation effective October 30th, 2023, and a lump sum payment in the amount of 3 months' pay.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. Adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Mr. Mellador?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, item 7, special presentations. I don't think we have any tonight.
We don't have any tonight.
All right. Item 8, public comment. This is a point on the agenda where anybody who wishes to provide public comment to the board on an item that's not agendized on the agenda is welcome to do so, and will be provided 3 minutes for their comments. If you are here on an agenda item that is on the agenda, you will have an opportunity to speak on that agenda item when we get to it for a separate public comment. Let's see, we've got some cards. We'll start with Lorette Gaberman. Welcome.
Good evening, board, and Dr. Kaliki, and all my friends on both sides right now, but especially my friends in the trenches back here. You are all very special and serve a wonderful purpose. Look at me, I'm here without a piece of paper for the first time probably ever. I have nothing planned to say. What I do want to say is this. A lot of us have been here a long time. And I can tell you right now, in my time, we have never had a contract on time. I'm talking close to 30 years. It would be so wonderful if we could have true good faith bargaining. And I don't mean just on one side, but I do know that my friends in the union have done a lot of good research, and we know what we're getting. We also, what you've gotten, excuse me. I also have a very unique situation in my life because, you know, my brother-in-law is a legislative attorney. My nephew is an attorney. My sister's a judge. It goes on. And they love to text me and tell me every time, oh, the governor is giving you guys this money. You're going to get money. And I'm like, okay, you don't know how this works. They're constantly telling me every time, well, you should be having this much. You're going to be okay. When you retire, you're going to be okay. I'm sitting here going, yeah, that doesn't work that way. Good faith bargaining really includes sending back items that don't just have the font changed, okay? We really are not that dumb. And as a matter of fact, a lot of us are menses, okay? We're not dumb. We know the difference. And we know the difference, what is good faith and what isn't. And all I'm asking is that you and anybody else who's involved in making these decisions, think about that, because we love our district. This isn't a thing against the district at all. We just want fair and equal pay. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Melanie Passavoy. Welcome.
Good evening, board. My name is Melanie Passavoy. I am a math teacher at Folsom Middle School, and I am reading a letter on behalf of a teacher who was unable to be here this evening, but wanted their comments read out loud. I am writing this to offer some advice to the board. I think that FCUSD should reach out and request that nearby school districts make official statements of gratitude to Folsom Cordova for training and preparing highly qualified teachers for their districts. While I sincerely applaud the district for investing in new teacher training and development, I believe the impact on our students will be minimal if we cannot hold on to these teachers. It is no secret that nearby districts have made large investments in their teachers this past year, so it should come as no surprise when our newly trained educators start looking down the road for better opportunities. If FCUSD is genuine in wanting to retain talented educators, then they need to act upon it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michelle Flowers. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I am also reading a letter on behalf of a teacher who could not be here. Dear Board Trustees, it is with a heavy heart and great frustration that I write this letter. Having seen the 2% offer from the district is frankly insulting. While no teacher gets into the profession for the money, a living wage is crucial to teacher retainment, which is stating the obvious. As a newer teacher with a master's degree, I cannot afford to live in the community I serve. Thus, I travel 30 to 45 minutes each way a day with no prospect of moving into the borders of the district. What the counteroffer says is that you could care less about supporting your teachers, and the one-third turnover of teachers and staff from the summer makes a great deal more sense. With the additional funding coming into the district, I do not believe that it is asking much to allocate a sensible amount to the teachers who are working tirelessly and with massively packed classes and exhausting workloads. Your criteria is contingent upon factors that teachers have no agency in changing or making, I think there's a typo, but don't hold that against this letter. Agency in change making our ability to get a fair raise even more difficult. It is not only disparaging to see the proposed counteroffer, but it sets my sights outward. Districts around us are more competitive in a profession that can't compete with other jobs. FCUSD has effectively sent the message that it's okay to sideline the needs of their teachers in favor of a top-heavy structure, and in doing so, will continue to alienate and see the further decline of teacher efficacy in a district that is okay with not valuing its teachers. Please hear our calls for assistance and give your teachers the wage that they deserve. Otherwise, you are simply kicking the can down the road and exasperating the problem.
Thank you. Before we switch over to the Measure M in high school construction, is there any other speakers on the salary negotiations? Okay. All right.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Galden. I am an IA for the district, and I am also one of the people that you are needing to hire this next school year. I'm going to be going into the Sacramento intern program, so we have more teachers. However, I want you to hear what our interns are seeing when they get to go and look at the salary schedules. $60,084. $59,128, $57,478, $56,979, $56,619, $55,158, and one more $53,694. Just so you are aware, that last number is our district. The top number is not even for any district in our county, in our counties, or even in California. It is actually the number given to McDonald's general managers who do not need a degree or a credential to work that job. When you look down the line, what do you think our interns are gonna see? Do you think they're gonna come for a school district that is 53,000? No. We know we're worth more. We know we're needed. The intern program is because we are so desperate for teachers right now. So they are going to look for the places that give the best money and the best support. And right now, Folsom Cordova is not that. Not only are these teachers providing for their own families, they are providing for their students. They are the reason many of our students come to school every day. They're excited to learn because on Friday, there is gonna be a Kahoot quiz, and if I win, I get to go to the prize box, and there's a slime in that box that I've been wanting, which was paid for by my teacher, not by the district, by my teacher. So when you guys go back into that room, I would love for you to look over everything you think about what teachers pay for, what teachers do. There's a lot more they do than you actually see every single day. Pay your teachers more because they do more for you and they deserve it. Thank you.
Hi, board. My name is Chelsea Cunha. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Mitchell Middle School. Many of you know me well. I have various also work that I do across the district, including equity and SEL. In fact, I was given an award last month from the district for my work in SEL. And I just have to point out that SEL is more than just saying teachers need to take some self-care, because that's what we get told a lot. Take care of yourself, set boundaries, make sure that you're okay so you can show up for your students. And yet we can't pay our bills. I can echo that letter that someone read, that they have to drive 30 to 40 minutes every day to get to Folsom or Rancho Cordova because we can't afford to live here. I can't buy a house. I'm a millennial and things are against me. I get that. But I can't afford to live in this area, and yet I show up for my students every day. And I gotta say, I don't feel like we're asking for much. 2% feels like disrespect, and it doesn't feel like you're telling us that we're appreciated, and we don't work our contract hours, and you don't know what that would be like if we truly did work our contract hours. We get there an hour early. They know what I mean because they do it too. They do. We stay hours late. We grade papers on the weekends. We just do, and we do it because we love this job. We're not asking to be compensated for the hours we work on the weekends. We're simply asking to be compensated a little bit better for the work that we do, showing up every single day for the kids that we love. And in a district we love, we want to be here, because if we didn't, we could go somewhere else. There are jobs open everywhere, and there are districts that pay better. We want to be here, and we want to show up, and we want to partner with you. We just want to feel like it's an equal partnership, and we're feeling respected too.
Hello, my name is Stacy Moeller. Thank you. I know a lot of you guys personally. I know you as parents. I know you as colleagues. I know you as friends. And I've been in this district now for, gosh, how many times? 22 years? Okay, 25 years total of my teaching career, 22 years here. Now, you keep saying you guys are gonna put money into your new teachers. Wonderful. But guess who trains them? Us. Do you know how many people I have had to train in the last 5 to 10 years? Every year, it's a new person coming in. Okay, I'm the department head, I have to go train them. Or I have to rely on all these other teachers that have to do that. Okay, and I'm just gonna tell you, I've been around, I'm on the bottom of the pay scale. It's wonderful, it's great, but you know what? I lost money this year. My paycheck is less than last year because my cost of insurance has gone up, everything else has gone up. So now, we have to fight for a 120 just so we can pay our bills. I want to help my mother out who's like 74. I just want to help her pay her bills. But I can't because we're all fighting for 120. Okay, or we want to go and help out the kids after school. I mean, I've done Science Bowl for years and I love that group, but I mean, I don't get paid that much for it, but I do it because I love it. I'm also on a safety team, which I really love to learn about safety and talk about safety, but I don't get paid for that time. I show up at 7:45 in the morning and there's only like 3 of us on it because nobody wants to work for you if you're not willing to pay us the money. It's just, it's hard. We're willing to do so much more if you show us that we are respected. That's all the bottom line is. Just show us our respect, and I'm willing to do so much more for this district. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, my name's Amber White. I am an English teacher at Mills. I've debated many, many times about sharing this, but it needs to be said because you guys need to understand exactly how much we give. Last year, I literally almost gave my life. Last year, when I was working at 120, we had an English teacher quit. So I picked up the slack for my site. I started lesson planning for that teacher. I started grading for that teacher on top of my own 6 classes. And the result was I had a stroke at 38 years old. We do so much for these students and we want to feel valued, respected, but I'm also a single mom of 3. How do I explain to my children that they can't do some of the things this year that they could last year because I make less money this year? And I had to get better medical because I had a stroke, which requires a neurosurgeon on constant. So we want to feel valued. We want to be here. If I didn't want to be here, I would not have done everything that I did last year for those students who did not have a consistent teacher all year. But it's not worth it for my family, and it seriously has me questioning whether or not I can stay in this profession. Please think about that.
Hello, board. I told myself I wouldn't speak, but I had to. So my 21st year of teaching, and I've been in Rancho and Folsom, and I love my job. I wouldn't do it. I've been teaching a lot of the kids. I love parents here, former board member parents. I do what I do because I love it, and I don't do just what is expected. I don't do my contract hours. We all do more than what is expected because that's in our heart. And, you know, I have 4 kids. I've juggled it my whole 21 years. We do it because we love our job. And this is the first year I've actually started looking at different jobs. I never thought, I'm 43 years old. I'm not ready to retire. I am starting to look, is there something else I can do? Because it is stressful. It is a hard day. We don't get paid fairly. And we're not given the supports that we need. And I never thought I would say this. My first time, I'm starting to look for different jobs. Please consider giving us something respectful because you're going to lose the best teachers. We do more for our schools and for our students than what we're asked for because we love it. So please keep us here. Support us.
Hi, my name is Annie Jervis. I also teach at Mills. I spend 5 of my classes with our refugee students in our beginning ELD program. And in a conversation with my colleague where we recently discussed the 2% offer, we calculated it out at our steps to be approximately $97. So I would like you to know how many times since June, out of my own pocket, out of that paycheck, I have spent $97 on my classroom. I have purchased toothbrushes, pencils, notebooks when the school could not provide them and said, those are not in the budget this year. Well, they have to come from somewhere. My refugee students are not going to bring them with them. Someone has to provide them out of my own $97 pocket. Novels from people who have written books within this century that represent the populations of our students that we don't have. So I would ask that before you offer us $97 again, you ask us, or perhaps think about how many times we have spent that same amount out of our own pockets for the children in our classrooms instead of on our own families.
My name's Lori Wilkin. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but feel compelled to share something. I started off with this district many years ago as an IA. Then I started teaching the CEP program, resource teacher, and now I am teaching 4th grade this year over at Oak Chan. But I'm really not here so much to talk about myself and what I've been doing as much as I want to talk about my son, who is 20, is in the 18 to 22-year-old program. And it is his 2nd year in the program. He has autism. And I cannot say enough about the teacher that he has for the past 2 years and the amount of growth he has made in the past year, learning to take the bus system, job skills, life skills. It's truly amazing. And I attribute it truly to Miss Martin at Folsom High. She is an amazing, amazing teacher. And quite frankly, it saddens my heart to think that our school district thinks that she's only worth 2% of a raise. To me, I wish I was a millionaire to pay her. The amount of things that she has taught him in just this past year, he will take with him for years into the future. Like I said, please, 2%, she's worth way more than that. Please think about that.
Hi, my name is Adam Smith. I'm actually not a teacher. I'm here supporting my wife, but I am an attorney. And when you're an attorney, you work on the billable hour, and it's actually broken down into 6-minute increments. And every minute that I work, I bill that time. I could not possibly add up the amount of time that my wife works for free alongside me, late hours at night, on the weekends, and she doesn't track that time. She just does it out of the love for the job. I can't think of another profession where people are willing to work for free because they care so much about their clients. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. There's intangibles that these people offer you that you simply don't take into account. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nilima. I am a parent. I just want to say, please pay our teachers more. They do so much for us. And it was really hard for me to hear just now that one of the teachers at our school is thinking of leaving. I mean, she has a reputation for being amazing. Parents are sending their children to these schools because these are highly ranked schools. They're highly ranked because of the teachers. So I really want you guys to think about it. Please pay them more.
Thank you to all the speakers who just got up to speak. Oh, you want to join? Yeah, please.
Jump in.
Yeah.
I did not plan on speaking either, but I can't sit still. I love what I do, and I can't imagine doing anything else but teaching social science to 8th grade students. After seeing my kids go through 8th grade, I thought, okay, I'll teach anything but that. But that's where I ended up. And it took me 2 days to figure out that's exactly where I belong. Like all teachers, the job takes over my life, my relationships. No one knows a teacher's life and what they really give to their students, like their families and friends. I can't spend time with my grandkids for an entire day on the weekend. I'll say, well, I can do 3 hours. How about that? And I've been explaining to my own children, the parents of my grandchildren, I feel terribly guilty. about my situation and the time that I don't have to spend. And I've been trying to explain that to them for a long time, and they understand as adults, but it's certainly not what they would like to get from me and not what I would like to give to them. I know I can just say no and not work, but I know what my lessons are going to be like the following week. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to give my students less. I feel like my job is so important. And I was a bit demoralized, not only by the offer by the school district of 2%, but I was a bit, what's the word? I don't know, demoralized, unappreciated, undervalued, when for the first time in a staff meeting that started the school year out, our principal told us our mission is learning whatever it takes. And we know that, we've had that, teachers chose that mission statement. But it's taken on a whole new meaning, and it's not just our principal, it's all that's expected, all the pressure put on principals to have schools and teachers that perform in a way that Folsom Cordova School District can brag about. And again, I'm on board with that because I know how important my job is. But usually, at least, and I'll finish, I heard that. Usually, at least, I feel like administration or those who are working, that won't stop, okay, who are asking us to do more and more and more, at least they pretend to acknowledge what we do, and they say, make sure you take care of yourself, though. Right? Well, now there was no pretense in our staff meeting. It's learning whatever it takes, and if weekends is what it takes, then that's whatever it takes. If late nights is what it takes, then that's whatever it takes. So please, we give and give and give, and we know that we give because our students are important and their education is important. Please show us some respect with a decent and fair offer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to the cards. We have Sung Park. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Sung, and I'm here to represent multiple concerned families from Folsom Plan area. We are deeply concerned regarding the two options presented from the study sessions on October 9th. We understood that escalation in cost as well as no school built in Rancho Cordova through Measure M. However, the options presented on October 9 disregards the student population and bound to cause a significant ripples across the real estate market in the region. We believe the correct compromise option is to prioritize the elementary school in Rio del Oro and fund the comprehensive high school in Folsom with remaining fund from Measure M. Folsom Plan area elementary school number 3 and the middle school there, and additional schools in Rio del Oro should be funded through the next bond measures to encourage parents to vote for it. We went through years of no elementary school, and Rio del Oro population is reaching toward when we were at the time Mangini Ranch Elementary School broke the ground. We support prioritizing elementary school in Rio del Oro. And we believe it's every parent's best interest for a single comprehensive high school in the region because college entrance has become increasingly competitive and extracurricular activities became extremely important. A competitive high school needs to offer various extracurricular activities, and that's only possible when student body size supports, and that's only through a large school with single focused funding. And any open market, such as a stock, real estate market, is that they're extremely efficient in utilizing the public information. The demand and the price has essentially baked all public information into it. FCUSD published the school construction timeline, and defying it, it will have market consequences. The reason why Folsom planned area has larger demand despite the lack of infrastructure is that most residents are focused on education and supporting this school district. This is not about Rancho Cordova versus Folsom. We understand we are in the same SFID number 3 and willing to fund the rest of the school in this district, but this line skipping will impact negatively to the future funding. We understand the funding is not sufficient to build all schools, and school district trying to stretch the bond, providing both high school and middle school in the region, but we encourage to stick to the plan. We understand additional funding is needed, and any additional funding needed for these teachers' pay raises, bring it on the ballot on November 2024. We'll vote for it. We'll pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Matthew Roybal.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Matthew, and I'm a parent in the Folsom School District. And we moved here about 2 years ago. And we had a lot of high expectations set with this plan of all these schools that were going to be built along with all these homes and everything like that. And I just recently learned that, unfortunately, Measure M wasn't enough to support this ongoing plan of construction because of higher costs, which was really disappointing. And it doesn't seem like it's anybody's fault. It's just that things happened. So my understanding is that there may not be enough funds for the 2 additional schools that are coming up. According to the plan that I saw, there was an elementary school for Rancho Cordova and a high school for Folsom. And while we could sit here and argue about who deserves what, or how to go about things, I think we do have to keep in mind that we're one school district and we need to work together. So I do want to come across is that there is a lot of parents that I've talked to that do understand this and do want to see everybody work together rather than having a us versus them mentality, which I know some people have had, and I don't support that. But I guess from my perspective, there was a plan set in place with Measure M, and expectations were set according to that plan of how things were going to proceed. And that was one of the reasons why we chose to move here, was because the education system was so good, which has wonderful, wonderful teachers. We've been very, very happy with them. And so, there's obviously going to be more population growth, more homes being built and so forth, and it's going to require more funding because the money is going to run out and we still are going to continue to grow. But I do think that it's important to stick to the plan and figure out ways to raise in additional funds so that we can continue following through with the expectations that were set for all of us. That's the whole district. And, if those plans were to change, I think that would cause a lot of problems down the road, because then there is a loss of trust of this was the plan and now it's being completely changed, which I think would be really unfortunate. And so I just wanted to say, basically, as a Folsom, school district parent, I'm hoping that we can find a way to work together. Obviously, the funds are running low, but we would really like to see, the plan being stuck to, and also understanding that to help everybody get what the expectations that were set is that we do find ways to raise additional funds. And I agree with the other gentleman that we can pass another bond to raise more funds to do that. Lastly, my dad was a teacher. I saw him work nights and weekends consistently for years. And I have to agree that 2% is really low. So I wasn't expecting to talk about that, but 2% is, it's less than CPI, so it's actually a pay cut. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Justin Long. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Superintendent, board members. I'm Justin Long. I'm an active duty Navy captain in the United States Navy for the next, 42 days. Retiring after 30 years, we're coming home. We're coming home to Folsom. We're coming home to Sacramento. I have my daughter and son, middle schooler, and a primary school student. I'd like to give back a little bit tonight. My previous command just recently was the Navy Recruiting Command in headquarters in Millington, Tennessee. Thousands of recruiters in thousands of locations around the country. We had a lot of work to do to manage our scarce resources. I had probably the most effective data management, big data analysis cell that you could imagine, predictive analytics. I have this entire country segregated down by zip code about who does what, where we are most likely to find quality candidates to join the United States Navy. I know exactly where we can put our people to have the most return on investment. And I know where the growth areas are. I know demographic information. I can tell you how a high school is going to perform based on the start time, class sizes, teacher salaries, and many other factors. I came to Folsom because we like the school district. I've done my full analysis. I just checked with Dr. Ammons Moreno of MIT today and the cell. I don't think your data is quite accurate enough to understand the level of growth that we, the United States Navy, the federal government, predicts over the next decade. This zip code, 95630, is considered to be a hot zip code. Hot zip. Top 10%. Top 10% in the nation for what we expect for growth. It is deep purple on our growth chart. We expect that by the end of the decade, households with children under 18 will be over 50%. We have all of the demographic information. We've put it in there. This area is growing, and it is growing in quality too. We are moving Navy recruiting centers out of San Francisco into this area because we see its potential. I don't think you're quite ready. I don't think you're prepared for the level of growth that is coming. I don't think your data really reflects just how much we're going to have. And I think you need to study it to understand that things are flowing in here. And you have an opportunity here to create a district that is going to be such a level of quality students based on the demographics of the parents and the quality of the teachers that you have, that it's going to equate to people who go to school, go to college, and pass and remain in college, which is a big factor for us. This district has the potential to lead many districts throughout the nation, and I've been around. I think you need to look into that. So what these gentlemen have been saying about the need to fund these schools and have a quality high school in Folsom, the numbers back it up. And I'd be happy to talk with the board on a future date about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more individuals in the audience tonight that would like to speak on Measure M or high school? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Amy Namaski McBride, and just a little about me. I'm a graduate of Cordova High School. That's my math teacher. She also helped me become a teacher. I'm a teacher in a neighboring district. I live in the new Folsom Ranch area, and the reason that I wanted to make a comment is just I was looking at all the stuff, and I've been seeing what you're talking about, and I think that we really need to take a look as a community and come together to see what each Folsom Ranch and Rio del Oro community needs at this moment. And I think that that's the equity piece that we will have. And if they're coming in and they need an elementary school, then that's what they need. And if we're coming in and we need a high school, that's what we need. And it's okay if they're not the same amount of money for that measure, because we're needing to do what that community needs, not what that community wants. And so I just wanted to put that out there and say that I hope we have more talks about this in the future. And I just want to thank all these amazing teachers, because I'm here today because of them.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's go to online. Do we have anybody online? No? All right. Well, thank you all for your comments tonight. Very much appreciate that. Then let's move on to agenda item 9, reports of district organizations, and we'll start with the Student Advisory Board.
Hello, everyone. We don't really have any developments from the SAB, but our next meeting will be November 1 at Cordova Lane Center. Thank you.
Thank you. California School Employees Association, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Clegan and esteemed board members. I start shaking every time I come up here. I can't stop it. As we approach negotiations and our first official offer from the district next week, I would like to make a statement in regards to a competitive and equitable raise. With the rate of inflation and the cost of living increases across the state and the country for that matter, a 2% raise would feel like an insult at this time. Our members are demanding more. Our members are demanding a raise that is equal, if not better, than the rate of our cost of living adjustments. We often talk about having trouble retaining our employees. There are a number of reasons we have trouble retaining our employees, one of them being cost. There are a number of reasons we have trouble retaining our employees. Money and benefits probably being the number one, the other being lack of care for classified staff. An equitable raise would go a long way towards retaining classified staff. We just want to feel appreciated. When one is told they can make more money by working at McDonald's, that person then starts looking at their options. And now you don't have to look too far or too hard to find a better paying job. We want this to change. We want our jobs to be the ones outsiders are looking at and want, because our district pays well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, the Folsom Cordova Education Association. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Suter. I'm the Executive Officer and Bargaining Chair for FCEA, and I'm presenting on behalf of all these people. On October 11th, the district brought to the table a revised tentative agreement. I say revised because it was identical to the one we saw on August 30th with 2 additional lines. The 2 additions were about adding a work day for the 24-25 and 25-26 school year. If we work 185 days instead of 184 days, then we get paid. It's roughly 0.5% of a member's salary. A reminder to everyone behind me, that can go away when the MOU and agreement goes away in a couple years. So it's not a permanent addition to your pay. And I say that because people have been emailing me questions about these things. I would also remind everyone, including the district, that their compensation offer was for this year, 23-24, and the calendar piece would not start until next year, 24-25. At the table, the original compensation offer was re-explained to the bargaining team. The problem isn't that we didn't understand it originally. Your problem is that we actually do understand it. I've been searching for the right words to explain to you why our members have had such a strong, negative, visceral reaction to that offer. Your offer is asking us to work on spec. You're offering 2% now, with a possibility of 1 to 3% in April, which means May, when the work is complete, with a whole lot of ifs attached. If the enrollment is what we expect their enrollment to be, if the attendance rate is what we expect it to be, if for reasons I don't understand, next year's COLA comes in at what is currently projected by the governor's office, then this year we get paid more. It makes no sense. Next year's COLA should have nothing to do with this year's pay. I would also point out that when you go to fill up your gas tank, they're not going to accept that I'll get paid somewhere in April and May, I think, if everything falls into place. Unless you've won the lottery, I suspect everyone in this room has experience with budgeting. And my apologies to some of our younger teachers, but I've been here for over 30 years. Personally, the largest part of my budget is my mortgage. I chose it and I planned for it. Everything else, whether it's home repair, vacation, or trust me, I can have a long list of things I want to spend money on, have to be considered in light of what's left after the mortgage is taken care of, because that's my priority. So as I make those decisions for myself, I am putting priorities based on what's left post-mortgage. We're your mortgage. We are in the business of education. At its core, it requires two groups of humans. It requires students, and it requires the frontline adults in the classrooms with them. That's us. Our role in the budget needs to be commensurate with our role in the education process, not an afterthought. And not dependent on meeting all of those contingencies. Your offer clearly hit a sore spot because it magnified the general sense that our membership is one of the last parts of your planning and budgeting process. All the years we spent chasing the budget to figure out where was the money going, and much of it predated, in all fairness, most everyone here on this table, but we can't keep chasing after what happens after the fact. That is why we keep saying that budgets are about values. And the way you're budgeting puts us way at the end of that value process. We brought our counter to the table as a reasonable and responsible alternative that builds teachers into the budget from the beginning, that reflects our value to this enterprise and truly treats us as respected partners. So we have a little math lesson for you. The numbers are all from your budget. Sean gave us a lovely 3-hour presentation on the budget in August. You saw pretty much the same presentation, but I think a little bit shorter. So the two numbers that you're going to keep saying in that presentation on page 25, we have the cost of 1%. That's salaries and statutory benefits as well. The LCFF is the money the state gives districts to meet their LCAP goals. It is ongoing funding. It is aimed for the students in the classrooms. We used your assumptions of a 94% attendance rate, and those numbers were in August prior to current enrollment numbers, which are actually coming in higher. How much new ongoing funding is there? This is where it gets complicated, and the people behind me are not going to like some of this explanation either. But ongoing funding is there to support core programs in the district. It's really controlled by a couple factors. We have the top line number of 8.22%, but in reality, it's also the attendance the district has, the attendance rate, the number of students, and even what grade levels those students are in. For 23-24, the state budget increased LCFF funding by 8.22%, but we don't have 100% attendance. So, from your own updated budget on October 11th, Sean's very good and very transparent and very good with his estimates. So we are expecting about 200 to 250 more students. CBED should have been becoming official at some point this week, so we'll find out. Even if you kept the 94% attendance rate, You're projecting an additional 2.6 million of revenues over the budget you saw in August. When the 20-day challenge completed, they had a 95.5% attendance rate. And while it may not last the entire year when it comes in April and gets fixed, it could be up to 6 million. We're not trying to bankrupt the district. We know that there'll be additional numbers coming, amount of money coming. But when we base this, we're trying to show you that you can budget for us from the get-go and not have to wait until after the fact. You've seen variations of this chart before, and I understand the concern, like 38% of what? And 35% of what? And that's a fair argument. And that's why we don't want to keep chasing the money that gets spent or doesn't get spent and rolls into the reserves. And the reserves for us is a one-time grant funding. It gets very complicated. One thing we do want to suggest to you is that 40% is a good, safe number. We are expensive, but we're a big part of what happens with this district. We do need to get paid for. CTA recommends that districts spend 40% of their budget on certificated employees to maintain a stable staffing. In other words, the recruiting and retaining we keep saying we want to do. So for the remainder of the slide, we're going to focus specifically on ongoing funding, the numbers that were already in your August budget, and show you that you can make a much more respectful offer. So, if we use the numbers from your own August budget, we kept the assumption of 94% attendance, and we kept the enrollment as it was starting in August. You had an increase over the 22-23 budget of our $16 million. Again, we're keeping with very safe conservative estimates here. We understand that you don't want to spend money until the money's in the bank, but the money's coming. Your own projections suggest that it is. So here's the math. If you took that 16 million and set aside 40% of it, again, this is ongoing money. It will continue into future years. 40% of 16 million is a little over 6 million, 6.5 million. If you divide by your own estimated cost of a 1% salary increase for our unit, that's 4.875. Now, in all fairness, some of the problems are with the way the state of California funds education. These are all movable numbers. We had our PowerPoint locked in, and some numbers started coming out with the LCFF, and the cost of 1% is actually less because you've been hiring people a little cheaper than the people who've been leaving in part. And we redid the math at the table on the back of an envelope, and truly, if you're like, wow, she rounded a lot, not really. It's really 4.9% with updated numbers, and that top line number is a lowball estimate. So we came up with 4.9% from your own budget before anything else happens. A second part of the math, and really what causes so much frustration and so much of people are tired of showing up in their red t-shirts begging for money. But this is part. The second part of this illustrates the frustrations, and really maybe on all sides. So when you had your 22-23 budget and you closed it out in the second interim, you had set aside money for salaries, our salaries, that didn't actually get spent. So that money tends to end up in the reserves someplace, and then we come and talk to you about the reserves, and we have good debates about the reserves. But truthfully, if we just focus on that one line item from last year, you had a difference of 1.4 million between what you budgeted and what you spent. Partly that's because you have to budget like all the positions will be filled. Eventually, those positions are acknowledged as unfilled, or a teacher resigns and gets replaced with a teacher who doesn't cost as much. So you budgeted properly. Eventually, it comes out of the budget and rolls into other places, but it was meant for our salaries. So if you divide by the cost of strictly salaries, and for those of you who have sharp budget eyeballs, I put the number on the side. It's a different denominator because I'm only dividing by salaries because that line item is only salary related, did not include the statutory benefits. That's 1.3% raise across the board to our members that you budgeted for last year and didn't actually spend. So if we have the 4.9 and the 1.3, that is a slightly healthier 6.2% already in your budget. This one's got more, This one's got more ish attached to it, and I apologize, but that's kind of how school budgets go. We're recommending this as an ongoing process. Instead of waiting after the fact to figure out what you want to pay us, how about we actually budget for the teachers as you build your budget every single year? So if we cross our fingers and believe the 3.9% stays, the 8.22 really survived all of last year. So let's go with that 3.94. We're still using your August numbers, so we're still assuming the 94% and the lower enrollment than we currently actually have. We took 40% of what you already are estimating increasing in your budget in LCFF. We divided by the 1% cost for teacher salary increase, and we came up with 3.7% for next year. Now, admittedly, as a math person, it's a little iffy. We will get something this year, eventually somehow, so that 1.3 million for the cost of 1% is lower than it will be. But truthfully, your enrollment is higher, your attendance rate is improving, and so you will have more money. I will also point out that some of what we're looking on is what happens when you project 3 years in the future using your safest, most conservative budget amounts. They compound in a not nice way for that third year of your budget. So while the numerator might be a bit low, the denominator, the numerator is 2. We're still coming out, we checked it multiple ways, about 3.7% for next year. So here is our ask. Our ask is 6.2% across the board, retroactive to July 1st. 4.9% based on your own calculations of the LCFF increases, and the 1.3% that you budgeted for us and did not spend on us last year. For next year, 24-25, we know that there's other issues on the horizon. Healthcare is going to have a lot of changes in the next 6 to 8 months. Valuations of teachers, special education, putting in the new and ever-changing rules for pre-K. There are other things we need to spend our time on. So we're suggesting that second year. Notice 3%, and yes, the people behind me, I know that's not 3.7, but 3% is a very reasonable ask and allows some wiggle room because we are asking to reopen healthcare where everyone can negotiate necessary changes and improvements. We also added the 0.5% from the calendar, but again, I remind you, that's only if we agree to the extra day of work, and it could disappear after 2 years, depending on how the MOU gets funded long term. So we're asking you to systematically build this into your budget from the start of the process. Show us the respect we deserve by using the increases in ongoing state LCFF funding intended for this year's students, this year's classrooms, to pay the teachers doing the work this year. Not maybe toward the end of the year, depending on an if and another if pertaining to next year. No one goes into teaching to get rich, but we do deserve to be able to take care of our families financially, to be paid fairly for the work we are doing right now. Instead of offering us empty words of appreciation, recognize our value and our role in the most important job the district has, educating students. Folsom Cordova students deserve the best. Their teachers, counselors, nurses, and all of our unit members deserve to be treated as valued and respected partners in all facets of education. The district's vision statement talks about empowering all students to thrive through educational excellence. We, your certificated staff, are the providers of that empowerment. Your budget and compensation offer need to reflect that desire for excellence. We will not settle for less.
Thank you, Tracy. Next, we have the Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Good evening. Kind of feel like we all need to take a deep breath. Good evening, Dr. Kaligian, President Reed, members of the board, and distinguished colleagues and guests. Tonight, I'd like to report and highlight our work from our curriculum and instruction team. Dr. Hubert, Lori Emmington, Angie Carlamagno, thank you, along with the rest of the lead teachers and the support staff team have worked endlessly to provide leadership, guidance, and support for all of our teachers in this district. Every week, a newsletter is sent out with the latest information and links to keep our teachers at the cutting edge of curriculum. As an example, this week's newsletter included information about Happy Digital Citizenship Week, dyslexia awareness, 4 C's of classroom systems updates, the new literacy project, EL checklist and report card resources with a video on how to fill out the checklist, math stuff, the trimester 1 DIBELS assessment, Tech Corner information, including Chat GPT and how to handle AI in schools, in addition to upcoming dates for calendars and the rest of the month. Our teachers and community are very lucky to have such a dedicated team of experts providing guidance and leadership for the most up-to-date information. Special thanks goes to our CNI team for their dedication and leadership. And I did bring copies of the newsletter in case you guys would like to look at them, but you can also find them online. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the District English Learner Advisory Committee.
There's no report this evening.
Nope, all right. All right, that takes us to item 10, agenda consent. I understand we are pulling items G and J for further discussion. So is there a motion to adopt the agenda with the exception of items G and J?
I'll move.
Motion by Board Member Hui. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member, was that Merrill who said that? Oh, Melajor, sorry. Second by Board Member Melajor. Superintendent.
Yes, Mr. Melajor?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, let's start with item G, approve selection of firms to provide architectural and design services. Superintendent.
Yes, this item's coming to the board as a follow-up from our June 5th request for statement for qualifications for architects and design services. And tonight we are bringing 5 firms forward, and Ms. Wickham will be able to answer any specific questions the board may have.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, there wasn't anything on the report of who the firms were or how we went through that process or.
Okay. Ms. Wickham will give a little background.
As far as in the item, it states which ones we actually hired.
Yeah.
There were 19 firms that actually submitted to us, and we interviewed 7, and we went with the 5 that are on the item, which is HMC Architects, HED Architects, Lionakis, DLR Group, and Studio W Architects. We had advertised and made sure that everybody got the request for the proposals.
Perfect. And are any of these architects ones we've used in the past, or are most of them new, or?
HMC Architects was RGA, so yes, we're using that one currently. HED we are currently using, and Lionakis, DLR, and Studio W will be 9, are new to us.
Okay.
And we're excited to actually get some other creative juices flowing and see what we can do.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate your work and your diligence and, getting some additional input on this. So thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a question. So of the new architects that we're bringing on board, do they have extensive experience working with school construction?
Yes, all of them do. And what we plan on doing is going through all of the projects, suggesting which architect firms we would like to assign, and we would bring that back to the school board to approve.
So would this be on a site by site? You would?
Project by project.
Project by project. And do some of the architects have like specialty in elementary and others have specialties in high school, or is it
Yeah,
pretty
a couple
interchangeable?
of them have done, high schools aren't built that often, and so we did make sure that we had some architect firms that had background on doing the larger high school projects. All of these have had school background. That was one of the requirements, and have a lot of experience with the Division of State Architect.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the audience, since we did pull this off online? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt item G?
I'll move.
Motion by Board Member Larrett. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Mr. Meliger?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right. Item J, approve renewal for non-public schools master contracts for the 2023-2024 school year. Superintendent?
Yes, this is the time of the year that we bring forward the annual renewal for our non-public schools for this school year. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Wessinger to answer any specific questions.
Good evening.
Board President had a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Mostly Ms. Wessinger, just wanted to discuss this item and find out a couple things. Number one, it is a huge item. It looks like we're planning on spending $5.3 million this year, an increase of about $750,000.
Yes.
So first of all, just wanted to know what's driving the cost of that increase. Is it services or the amount of students that we're sending to the non-public schools, or combination?
It's both. It's both. So first, let me give you start with a little bit of background that non-public schools are a program that's on our continuum of services, and the majority of the students that we send to non-public schools are students who have assaultive behavior towards students or staff. And if we go back to about 2018-19, our costs were about half that. They were about $2.6 million in 18-19, and we had 52 students and plus 2 students in residential treatment. If we fast forward to 23-24, our costs are double that. They're $5,368,000. We have 74 students, and we have 5 students in residential treatment. So some factors that, besides the increase in students that are contributing to that cost, is going back to 2018-19, our daily rate in a non-public school program was an average of $155 a day. And that's, we're working with about 12 residential schools this year, I believe. And so that was the average back then. And today, the average daily rate is $205 a day. And that's calculated not on our school calendar, but it includes ESY. So that would be times $200 a day, or times 200 days. That doesn't include the other related services. So it would not include speech, language therapy, occupational therapy, behavior services, mental health services, and transportation. So those are all added costs.
Is it fair to say those costs have all gone up as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And what's driving the increasing costs in the non-public schools is one big factor for them was they were providing lunch, but when the law changed and we had to provide breakfast and lunch for students, they had to provide breakfast and lunch for all students, and they don't receive federal funding for that, so we have to pay them for that, and their cost to provide those meals are significantly higher than what our district can provide those meals for. Another factor, transportation costs went way up, and minimum wage, but probably one of the biggest ones is that when the sexual abuse and molestation law changed and required insurance, the amount of insurance that we, districts and SELPAs, were requiring non-public schools to carry went up significantly. It included that they had to have that sexual abuse and molestation coverage. And so what our non-public schools found is that their insurance rates went up significantly. Another thing is, just as an example, is One of the non-public schools that we work with, when they started providing breakfast and lunch, just their cost for garbage pickup increased significantly because now they have food in the garbage, and it was a different truck that had to come and pick it up. So it's really, I would say probably the biggest driver is the increasing cost. But you can also see that our students have increased significantly. And then the residential treatment. So we were averaging 1 to 2 students on average per year back in 18-19 and moving forward in residential treatment. And last year and this year we have 4 and 5. We have 1 student currently in residential treatment. It's $500,000 for 1 student. And so when we send students to residential treatment, it tends to not be necessarily assaultive behaviors towards staff and students, but more very, very significant mental health needs that need to be addressed. And so those placements can be quite costly.
Yeah, it gives some sense that jump from 2 to 5, if it's as much as $500,000 per student, is fairly significant. I'm wondering, I'm assuming like everything else we're seeing with behavior in these last few years, is this a trend in local districts and across the state where people are seeing their numbers increase with this?
Yes, and I meet with the other SELPA directors, not only in the county, but in the region and in the state. And actually in our county, we get together and we negotiate the rates with the non-public schools. So we are all in Sacramento County paying the same rates.
Yeah, okay. Last thing, and this is, I'd love to hear your thoughts tonight. It wouldn't hurt to bring this back at some other point too, but it's a fairly exorbitant cost. We're seeing a rise in these numbers. And so I'm wondering just what kind of plans do we have in place that are addressing, reducing that number, maybe programs where we can keep students on our campuses, but still provide care for them?
I will say that it's probably a very small number represented in the 74, but in the last couple of years, the staffing shortages that we have experienced in our district may have contributed to the increase in the numbers of students going to non-public school. Because, for example, if we have a student who has really significant assaultive behaviors towards staff and students, if that classroom the student's coming from is not fully staffed, then it's hard to know whether we would have been able to manage the behaviors had the classroom been fully staffed. So that is definitely a factor there, but those students are represented a small number. We have our program specialists attend the annual IEP meetings, of course, every year. I monitor the schools. I go out there, and then we sort of have a rubric of how we look at which students we're going to target to bring back. And we want to, of course, bring our youngest students back as quickly as we can. But we also are looking at, sometimes students are placed there by attendance and due process or through that process of a disciplinary matter. And so we're monitoring those so that when they've reached the term of the expulsion, that we would be bringing them back to the district. So that's kind of how we look at, and every time we have an annual IEP meeting, we're looking at what are the goals that we are writing to teach the student the skills they need to return to our program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you. This rise in numbers is indicative of a lot of what our teachers were talking about earlier, that it's a difficult job. They're dealing with a lot every day in the classroom. Jumping from 52 to 74 students is fairly significant. So appreciate you and your team's work on all this and for answering the questions tonight.
Thank you.
I just have a really quick question, if you don't mind. In hopes of moving our district more towards an anti-racist trajectory, I'm just curious about the use of the term master contract, as that's something that just overall we've been working towards avoiding slave-based language. And so is there another term that could be used for this?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, we, now that you point that out, I can see that that's a problem. Our template that we use actually is developed by state SELPA. So we take the master contract that state SELPA provides, and they vet the legal, make sure that it's updated per ed code, all of that. And then we do the same thing locally. So it's certainly something that we can talk about locally and about how we can change that. Thank you for that.
All right. Let's see. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt item J?
I'll move.
Motion by Board Member Hui. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Larrett. Superintendent?
Yes, Mr. Mellinger?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 11, discussion action, our annual most fun topic of the year. Approve the 24-25 instructional calendar. Superintendent.
Yes, at our last board meeting, we gave you an update of where we were at with getting feedback from our students, our staff, and our families with the options A and B calendars that we had daylighted the meeting before. The survey and the thought exchange has concluded, and we have results from that survey. And I'm going to ask Mr. Ogden to go ahead and highlight those results and the two calendars.
Thank you. We have two calendars, and each one sort of has a subheading. So calendar A is a calendar that reflects a February break. Calendar B does not have a full week break in February. It has the traditional 2-day break in February, and the start date is a little later. Other than that, they're pretty much A and B are very similar. A1, if you look at it, it has our current contract language. A has a proposal, which we're working with the bargaining unit on, where we would add 1 day to the calendar year for professional development. So instead of a 184-day work year, it would be a 185-day work year. And we would change one of our instructional days to a professional development day. That needs to be negotiated. So if the board would prefer to have the February break calendar, that would be the A calendar, and I would ask for direction to go forward with the A calendar, either A or A1, depending on negotiations. And then if the board would prefer the later start, that would be the B calendar. And again, there's two iterations of that. Calendar B itself is 185 work days, 2 professional development days in the same model where we've added a professional development day before the school year starts, and we've changed one of our instructional days to a professional development day. When we put this out through Thought Exchange to the community, we received feedback from students and teachers that preferred the A or A1 model, which is students and teachers preferred, teachers, and I mean all staff, classified staff too. So all staff, including managers, responded that they would prefer to have the February break model. The parents and guardians, they preferred the B model or the later start with just 2 days in February.
Of course.
There's never an easy answer to these calendar decisions. And what I'm hoping for, if you ask me, which one do I prefer you make a decision tonight so we can go to the bargaining table and get the either the A or the A1 or the B or the B1 figured out and have something we can go forward with, because we need to start planning our professional development for next year. And this is a big part of it.
All right, board questions.
I just have something to say. Every time I've talked to a teacher or student about these calendars, it's been A. They've wanted the ski week in February. I want the ski week in February. I believe it's a little bit of a break before the spring final stretch of the year. It's another time you could go to vacation. You could go to Disneyland if you want. You know, you couldn't do that with the previous 4-day weekend. So everyone I've talked to, I haven't talked to a single person, a parent, teacher, or student who wants the B calendar. They've all been focused on the ski week calendar, and I agree with that.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I just had a quick question regarding the professional development days, and it came up earlier in the fact that it's written in an MOU for 2 years. And so if we're looking at adding these on the calendar, is this something that we're looking long-term, or is there a reason that it's just the 2 years? Can you just
The
kind
reason
of clarify that?
we were proposing a 2-year model for this is we were using one-time funds.
Okay.
So this, if we were to put it as a ongoing, then we would have to have a source to pay for it ongoing. Currently, we do have one-time funds for learning loss that we could use for professional development. So it's appropriate use of the one-time dollars.
Okay. So it's sort of hard to use in long-term also then in terms of retirement, since it's 0.5, while it goes towards that, it's only for the couple of years. It's not long-term.
So that's a good question. So the way they calculate retirement for all of our bargaining units is it's your salary, your annual salary. Because we would put this in the calendar, anybody who retired this year or next year, it would count as part of their salary. We've done professional development before, and this is getting a little technical, but when we've done it before, it's been an add-on. It's been voluntary. So it didn't count towards your retirement as the total. It actually, part of it went in your DBS bucket or your retirement bucket, but it wasn't part of your retirement calculation. As I've suggested it and as we've talked about it at the table, anybody who retired this year or next year, this would count towards their retirement.
Okay. And then one further question. I do not want a calendar C, but for future years, because there was a clear request for starting later and that week in February, is it possible, and I know we have the 10-month salary that we're working with, but a number of our area districts have a starter late start and start, so they go into the 11 months. Is there a way that we could kind of follow up with other districts and how they handle that, also with the 10-month pay, so that maybe potentially 25, 26, we could kind of work in both of those areas?
I could definitely bring a proposal back for the 25, 26 that would look like that.
Thanks.
I have a question, actually.
Yes,
about the PD days as well. So can you anticipate, because I know the MOU said it only has 2 years into the future for PD pay. Can you anticipate that in 2 years from now, we'll be negotiating a similar agreement for 2 more years of PD pay, or is it just this 2-year thing and that's it?
Well, every year we always talk about PD, and if we use one-time monies, that's one of the reasons we can use one-time money is for professional development. In the past, we've actually used carryover funds to pay for it. We've used supplemental funds to pay for it. So with PD, we've used funds that were targeted for that. In the past, though, we've done voluntary. Where this is a little different, this would be a mandatory day. This would be a work day on everybody's calendar. Whereas this year, when we had professional development days offered, they were voluntary. So staff could choose to come and be paid, or they could choose not to come, and they wouldn't have to put in a sick day. It wasn't a day that they worked. And these would be days they'd be scheduled to work.
And then I have one more question. I know a few people had mentioned removing spring break from the Easter season and perhaps standardizing it for future school years. What really happened to that topic of discussion?
It was brought up, but to look at further down the road. So if we were to look at 25, 26, that might be a year that we could put a formula together to have it the last week of March. And actually, the last week of March is when spring break happens in 25, 26. So that might be a good year to start that formula.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
But you're saying in 25, 26, we might have the calendar forever. Like, we might be good to go.
Oh, you could only wish, Carol.
Yeah, one of the things that, that I really would like for us to have a serious conversation on at a future date, or maybe even just direction to the staff, is related to the 25, 26 calendar. Mm-hmm. These calendars, I mean, they kind of sneak up on us every year, but we know they're coming, so it shouldn't be like a surprise. I too agree that having a standardized spring break, maybe the last week of March, makes sense. Okay. As long as we can provide, bookends on the Easter holiday for people who do travel but if we had a standardized standardized spring break calendar, which would be pretty much dead smack in the middle of the spring semester, mm-hmm. It potentially creates the opportunity that we could start a couple days later in August. And so it could be a win-win across the board, because right now we have the 1 week on this calendar. We have the 1 week for the
This is showing the spring. This
yeah.
one's showing the February full week.
Yeah, the February full week, and it's also showing where is it? April?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
April
full
spring
week.
break, April 14th.
Right, so if we had 1 full week, and it's the March, then that second full week that we have in this calendar, we could apply to perhaps starting a little bit later in August.
Correct.
And so I think, I understand that, for the 24-25, we had already gone down enough of a path that it was hard to do a hard stop and go to a different one. But I think if we could get at least some level of board consensus, maybe we can give you that direction now so that in 25-26, it's less of a topic.
I like that.
And if I may add to that too, we have a board policy which has some of the guidelines that the board has set in the past for deciding our calendars. And that might be a place, to relook at our policy and maybe add some of those standardized areas that we have consensus on. And we could look at the current policy at our subcommittee and get some feedback from the board and bring that back as a future discussion item while we have it fresh in our head and we have some time.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Board Member Hui?
Yeah, first of all, I certainly would be open to that. I did have a question here with calendar A. And I think it was Board Member Loftus, but forgive me if I'm wrong about that. At our last regularly scheduled board meeting, had brought up just this question around some of our families that might have a more difficult time taking time off, or if parents are working during the day, having some concerns around there. Did you get any feedback through the thought exchange or any other ways regarding that?
That was primarily the reason that parents and guardians chose B. There was a lot of comments on daycare on that week.
Okay, thanks.
Do you want to clarify again, maybe just for somebody who didn't hear the response last time? It was me that asked, and the district can provide childcare.
We have our extended
sorts
learning
at that
program, which we could provide daycare during that week. Yes.
All right, looks like we might have public comment coming up, yes, please.
Okay. So Don, can you go back to, it doesn't matter, whichever it was. Okay, so if I go ahead and I go back to A, or it doesn't really matter, I guess. If you add up all of the days that says semester grading periods, it says 180.
Which count? There's one has 181, one has 180.
Okay, so the A calendar had 180.
Correct.
Okay. So then, if you add up all the yellow, blues, pink, orange, purples, you get 6 more days. So that's 186 days. So my question is, are both PD days mandatory, or is only the 14th mandatory? I've done this math twice now.
No, the yellows are not.
No, I'm talking purple. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yellow is not. Thank you. That's all I needed.
All right. You scared me there, Jeanette.
No, I scared myself. I was like,
Looked at it a million times.
I know. That's why I'm like going.
All right, looks like we also have a couple of comment cards. One from Joanna Slaughter, welcome.
Hello, I teach kindergarten in Rancho Cordova Elementary. This calendar discussion. So my vote would be for B1. Teachers, this is my thoughts. We need PD, but not while I'm worried about setting up my classroom. It takes a lot of time to set up the magic of my kindergarten classroom. Every year I'm asked to pack every single thing away so that my room can get cleaned, and then I can't put it out while the kids are there. So I gotta come sometime and do it. So usually I'm back in July, or as soon as my admin and janitor let me sneak in and start putting my room together. You can ask my son, who came with me tonight, how often I am gone in July to get school ready for free, according to my husband. We used to have PD during the day and have release time, and I know subs are scarce, but we can get creative. Maybe have the lead teachers and or TOSAs do some PD at the sites. We're on a revolving schedule, like, hey, kindergarten, you guys go get PD while these two TOSAs take care of your classes. Then I get the required PD you want me to do, and I can do it while I have a brain in my head and I'm not tired at the end of the day. And I can take that capacity and take that in and be able to implement it in my classroom. And the only reason that I, as a veteran teacher, go to these PD days that are optional at the beginning of the year or throughout the year is really just to get more money for my family. I attend a lot of PD. I present a lot of PD in my capacity as a teacher induction mentor. So that is something that we could maybe consider. Also, I think there needs to be some PD where we can collaborate with our grade levels and where we can collaborate across the district in grade levels. We used to have a lot of that where Folsom and Rancho K teachers would have an afternoon. We'd do like a half an hour math PD, and then we got to collaborate with each other to see what we're doing in each other's classrooms. That was very beneficial, and I think that'd be something that if we brought back, our new teachers would enjoy. I like the later start date because it allows all my friends who teach this special education summer school, the ESY, I think is the initials for it, to actually have some summer break, because they teach that and essentially have like 2 weeks, and then we're back in the classrooms making the magic happen for our kids. As a mentor, I'm also asked to attend meetings before our calendar year starts. So even this calendar says, the 9th or the 8th or the 13th, I'm really already back in meetings that whole week. Essentially August 1st on, I'm in meetings. February week off sounds nice, but for where I teach and I work, it could be a hardship for my parents. Side note, my kids go to San Juan schools and their calendar looks kind of nice, especially for parent conference weeks. And the question, somebody's mentioned daycare for the February week. So who would be allowed to go to that daycare and who's gonna teach that daycare class or whatever that week would be called? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Chelsea Bogan. Welcome.
Hello, board. Dr. Clegan. I just emailed you guys yesterday. I don't think there's much more I can add. She said it so perfectly, but it's funny that Mr. or student board member Merrill said what he said, because pretty much everyone I have seen commenting online or talked to in person definitely wants the later start date and the B calendar. We already have a 40 weekend in February. We don't need a whole week off. And just to back up what Joanna said about the PD days before school starts, our heads aren't ready for PD on that day. We are thinking about all the millions of tasks we've got to do in our classroom, and that's the last place we need and want to be on that day. So thank you. B1.
Thank you. Any comments online? Okay. Back to the board for comments. Well, I mean, we got a couple of options before ourselves here. I'm wondering if we should take a straw poll right now on A versus B before a motion is put forward. One clarification, Superintendent. That week in February that's being proposed, I originally thought I had heard that San Juan Unified takes that week off as well. Is that correct?
I believe so. That's in their calendar for 24, 25, Mr. Ogden.
And does San Juan Unified also take off the same week that we take off for spring break? Yes. It is, okay. All right. All right, so is the board open to a quick straw poll, A, B?
Could I just ask one more question?
Sure.
My concern coming from the thought exchange, and maybe it's not a question, maybe it's more of a comment, is that 74% of the response was from Folsom and 26% was Rancho Cordova. And when we're talking about concern over livelihood realistically, and families not possibly being able to go to work because other people want to go on vacation, because they have to watch their kids. So is there any way to get more feedback from the areas that we have the greatest concern in terms of taking an entire week off in February.
Hi, excuse me, my voice is a little rough. Historically, our survey results do show low participation in Rancho Cordova. In the past, some of the strategies that we've done when we've to reach our families in Rancho Cordova has been in collaboration with Ms. Cabrera's office and our bilingual aides, and a lot of times paper surveys handing out. We still do not have a great track record of surveying with robust results in Rancho Cordova. One of the options potentially to look at is you can disaggregate on the thought exchange results just by those Rancho Cordova, those folks that you did respond who identify in any one of the three groups of staff, parent, guardian, or student, and then just see what those Rancho Cordova voices are. When you pull that out, calendar A did float to the top as being the favored one of the three groups in Rancho Cordova, but I hope I answered some of that question, but I'm happy to answer any others.
No, I just think maybe that's something we could brainstorm on, and I know we have, but we're coming up on some really big decisions that we really need input from the entire district, and so really trying to come up with a solution to that problem.
Okay, agreed. Just to clarify, you said when the information is disaggregated, it's whether it's Rancho or Folsom, students and teachers, it seems like pretty overwhelmingly chose calendar A.
Overwhelmingly across both sites, Folsom and Rancho Cordova, students favored A, staff favored A from the Thought Exchange survey, and then just pulling out just Rancho Cordova, all three groups, the overwhelming response was A. Now, we could even go down further to disaggregate. For instance, we could take a look at Rancho Cordova students and Folsom students. You know, we could go down that path too. And there is a link, and I believe you may have it, so you can actually take a look at the thoughts. And if not, I'm happy to kind of walk you through that.
That's good. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Oh, and one other thing too, just to mention, when we sent out the message in the introduction to participate in the survey, that message was translated into Spanish. It was presented in English and Spanish. And then the Thought Exchange survey itself does have an ability to write, read, and view everything in a multiple of different world languages, including Pashto, Dari, Farsi, Arabic, Spanish, English, Hmong. So anyway, any other questions?
Superintendent, if we move forward with either A or B, is the motion that you would be looking for is to adopt, for argument's sake, we'll say A, calendar A, and the extra day dependent on negotiations?
Yes.
So that you have the flexibility to go either way based on those negotiations?
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All
We'd
right.
have to negotiate the impacts,
Okay.
the board's decision.
So I guess let's do a quick straw poll, just I guess either say A or B, just so we can get a sense where the board is, and we'll just go right down the line. So we'll start with board member Melajor.
A.
A.
I like B1.
A.
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 So it sounds, all right, well, I think we have three that have indicated A, plus the student board members that included A as well. So, never easy. Who knew calendars are so challenging? Is there a motion for the adoption of the calendar? And this would be either A or B, and if the motion is for the adoption of a specific calendar, we are indicating A or A1 and B or B1 because that will be contingent on the negotiation. Is there a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion that we adopt calendar A.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Merrill, and motion by Board Member Hui.
Mr. President, just for clarification, so B, if we're going with A, obviously that's a consensus. So B is not on the table. Can it be? Please?
Could you speak a little bit more to the,
Well-
what you're?
Well, I
like
mean,
about B?
I like the late start, and I'm sorry my iPad died, but if you can stay on B, I like the late start. But with A, I mean, you have a pretty long stretch in September and October where you have the professional development day, that's just one day. But then again, with A, you have, if you can go to A, you still have that. It was the other one I was looking at where it was a pretty long stretch of through September and October with no PD, no time off or anything. I don't know. Like I said, I still like B. But I mean, if the consensus of the board is, yeah, this is the one. If the consensus of the board is to go with A, then obviously I would support that as well. It's just with my concerns with that and the week off in February, you know, with their working families. And I'm just kind of wondering in Rancho Cordova, if they chose that, did they really understand it? I mean, you know, you're on thought exchange and there's really no viable explanation on that. So that would be my concern, especially those families that work, maybe not one job, but maybe two jobs, and that would have to find the appropriate daycare. So, I mean, whatever the board decides, I'll support it.
If I can comment, that's a concern of mine, certainly, the families that are going to have a hard time with that week off. I think part of what I'm going on, partly an effort to just move forward with this calendar is, it sounded like our teachers in Rancho pretty overwhelmingly chose A, and our teachers do know our families well. At least through the thought exchange, that's what they chose.
Gonna say please. Okay, I mean,
and that's at least that's what I'm working on that idea.
Totally get it.
If I could add something, in the future, I do believe paper surveys would be effective in getting Rancho Cordova consensus. I know hundreds of volunteers from all of our high schools would be more than happy to go to get service hours and pass those out to you know, our neighborhoods and stuff. I just feel like that would be an effective way to get more parents and student voice from Rancho Cordova.
And I can say that my concern is great with that week. And I'm betting on the fact that we said that we would be able to provide services for those families. So as long as that comes to fruition, and I think it's kind of a requirement of the extended school year stuff. So to have days within the school year. So that is a great concern of mine because I don't feel like that voice was heard as greatly as we needed it to really reflect whether or not that would be a concern. And so given that the district can provide services, that's sort of where I feel
If we were to, and I'm sorry, Madam Lofthouse, if we were to provide services, what if we reach capacity or we go over capacity? Would we have the staff to come in and, I mean, who are we using for staff? I mean, how would that work?
Well, we plan for it, so we have our ELP staff, so that's who would be staffing it.
Okay.
And we have other classified folks
So
who could,
just for
who
my
could work during that
understanding,
week.
we would not be capping that. I mean, if we have multiple families that obviously needed that service, we wouldn't put a cap on it.
Well, we'd have to figure out what we needed, and we would staff accordingly.
Okay, just a what if.
Yeah.
All right.
We do have a motion, but at the same time, it looks like the public wants to speak again. Is the board open to opening up public comment again?
Mr. President, I would make a motion to open up public comment.
All right, well, we don't need a formal, we'll open it up.
Thank you, Justin Long again. Thank you, Mr. President. One Freakonomic data that we have from Navy recruiting, just on this note, we've gone through this quite a lot. there is a correlation between earlier school start times of calendar and performance on SAT, ACT, and the ASVAB, which is the military battery. So it's a highly statistically significant correlation. You guys are already starting in August, which is good. But we found that even a week earlier gives more times for students to prepare for the standardized testing that usually happens in the fall time period. And schools back in Massachusetts, for example, will open earlier and allow their students to do a whole course of SAT and ACT prep, which kind of gives them an advantage when they're going for that type of stuff. So I just wanted to put that out. If you were to ask me as a parent, what would I prefer? I'd prefer to have my kid have more time in August to get started, to get prepared, and to focus on those things, because the SAT and the ACT are so important to college applications in so many different ways as well. So again, thank you for the opportunity to comment on that.
We might have a job for a statistician. Any other public? Please, welcome.
Well, I mean, I just wanted the clarification on the week in February, where the kids are going to go. We're going to cap it, and then some kids don't get in. I mean, I don't know. That's just a mess. And then starting in August, I had the very unfortunate experience of my AC going out. And so starting super early in August, it's still like 150. I mean, maybe sitting in here with my suit and the air conditioning, because Jim Huber gave me a blanket one day when I was here, because it can get cold in here. But when you're doing the work with 25 little kindergartners or, you know, higher, older, bigger kids, you need your AC and stuff to work. And they come in drenched. It's so hot, Miss Slaughter. So, I mean, even that week late would be a thing. And I do worry about that February week. It's nice for families who can be able to be home and take that time off. At some point in my life, I was a mom who was home, and I could be home with my kids when they had that week off, and it wasn't a big financial hardship or other kind of hardship for my family. But I've worked where I work for a long time, and I think that would be a hardship for a lot of my families. And I think you have an opportunity here, and for the future 2025 calendars. My first year teaching, not to throw another calendar at you, was a modified traditional, where we did start the first week of August, but we had a whole week in October. We had 2 weeks in December. We had 2 weeks in April. We had a lot of time built in where we catered to the families who left. I worked in a migrant community, and they would go back to the Philippines and go back to Mexico. So let's give them the 3 weeks they need to go, so that they don't pull their kids out and that teachers have to write independent study packets and all of that stuff. So that's a future conversation. But anyways, thanks for your thoughts again.
Thank you.
I have a daughter that is in elementary school, and I am a classified worker at Meadows Elementary in the SPED program. My problem with that is I will get February off, and as a classified staff, I will not volunteer to do that. I've worked summers for 3 or 4 years in a row, but if I am taking that week off, as many classified workers that I work with have children, so it will have to come from somewhere else than just the classified staff.
Can you state your name for the record?
Rebecca Mott.
Thank you. Online? No? All right. So we can either vote on the motion that's on the table, or if the person who made the motion, which was Board Member Hui, would like to retract his motion, we could do that and then entertain a new motion, or we could vote on the motion that's on the floor. If it fails, then we can take up the second, another motion.
Can you, good God. I'm already running on fumes.
I mean, unless there's consensus that we want to change the motion, I would move forward with it.
All right, so let's move forward with the motion. If it doesn't pass, then we will
had a question.
Entertain another. Yeah. The motion originally was by Board Member Hui and seconded by Board Member Merrill, which was to adopt calendar A or A1, depending on the negotiations. Superintendent?
Yes, Mr. Mellinger,
Aye.
Mr. Merrill,
Aye.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Hui,
Aye.
Ms. Larrett,
No.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
All right.
I said please.
I look forward to a much streamlined process in the future, hopefully. All right, let's see. That takes us to discussion, item 12, human resources best practices. Superintendent.
Yes, this evening, this presentation will be made by Mr. Ogden and be focusing on our best practices when we are hiring, training, retaining our employees, onboarding, how our human resources and staff in the departments handle complaints and how they engage in progressive discipline and how that's communicated out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ogden, who has this presentation.
Thank you. So I was just going to go over some policies and procedures, some of our best practices that we use in human resources, responding to some of the questions that were asked at our last meeting. So I'm going to start off talking about classified employees. When we look at recruiting and selecting classified employees, we post our positions on a format called Team Tailor, which broadcasts onto multiple job boards. From that, we actually look at the job application, and our job application requires candidates to disclose if they've been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor. It also requires that they disclose if they've been asked to resign from a position, if they need reasonable accommodations. We also ask for 2 or 3 letters of recommendation when they apply. Each applicant is screened by a personnel tech, and when they screen those, they screen them to make sure they meet minimum qualifications in the job description. And the hiring manager is then responsible for going through the applicants and picking the most qualified candidates. Typically, when we're doing our selection process for classified staff, they're either one-on-one or panel interviews. The hiring manager is the one who makes the recommendation to hire, but prior to doing that, our managers are required to do a couple of things. In the context of the interview, they do a forced ranking. So there's data. If someone were to dispute how someone was selected, we actually can go back and look at the paperwork and see how everybody on the panel rated each of the candidates. And then we also require that they do 2 reference checks. And those reference checks are a current or a recent supervisor, and it could also be a professional reference, but we ask for at least one of the references to be a current or a recent supervisor. For our onboarding, so once we've made an offer to someone, the next thing we do is we put them, when we hire someone in classified, they're in a 6-month probationary period, which means we can release them anytime in that first 6 months without cause. And Ed Code allows us to do that for classified employees. This has changed. In the past, we had up to 9 months. So this has recently, in the last couple of years, the time frame has been cut a little shorter. But we, when we're doing our onboarding process, we actually fingerprint our employees, and then we make sure that they've got a DOJ or an FBI clearance. DOJ, Department of Justice, is in California. So anyone who commits a crime or is arrested in California, that will show up. When they do their fingerprints with us, we will see their background anytime if they've been arrested. Also, a subsequent arrest. So imagine an employee's worked with us for 5 years and they get arrested. The DOJ report comes to me the next day. So it not only checks their background, it's ongoing as long as they're an employee with us. If any employee is arrested, we know about it in HR. The FBI clearance, we use that for out-of-state employees. So if someone lived out of state and they're now in California and applying for a job, we do the FBI clearance, but we do the DOJ, but we do the FBI to see if there's any arrests nationwide. We also screen employees for TB. For classified employees, we have some of the positions have pre-employment physicals. We do drug testing for transportation employees. We have proficiency exams for our paraprofessionals. We do typing certification and testing for our clerical and administrative staff. We do DMV polls for our drivers. We do Department of Consumer Affairs to verify different positions that require licensing, mental health professionals, behavior specialists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers, our registered nurses, all of our classified staff that have some kind of licensure, we verify that licensure. This is different than certificated. When we talk about a certificated person, certificated personnel are certificated through the California CTC. And so certain certificates, for example, you can be a nurse, but it's a school nurse, and that takes a certificate through the teaching commission, whereas you can be a registered nurse and not be certificated, right? You're classified. So when we're talking about certificated, it's through the CTCC. That's where your certificate is through. And that's an important note when I talk about onboarding certificated staff.
Mr. Ogden, just quickly, can you repeat what you said about the DOJ and FBI clearance? You said if they were coming from out of state, you would run it through the FBI and DOJ?
Correct. So
and if they were in state?
it would be DOJ only, because that's California only.
Right, but isn't there a possibility that someone worked out of state for 20 years, moved in state for 5 years, and then applied? Is there a reason why we can't or don't or can't run FBI against in-state candidates as well?
It just hasn't been our practice. So our practice has been to do in-state with DOJ, and then someone who we know came from out of state to do FBI and DOJ.
Would the cost of adding FBI to in-state applicants be significant?
The cost right now is borne by the applicants. So the applicant would have to pay for that cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It is a policy we could change. That's something we could explore.
And what's that cost? Do you know?
I can get back to you on that.
$62 for DOJ and FBI.
Combined?
Combined.
Okay.
I think it's about 40 for just DOJ.
Yep, right.
It varies because we don't do it now, but in the past we have actually done the DOJ in-house. And when we do that, it's a lower cost when we do it in-house versus have someone else do it or send them to, where they do the different agencies. And we actually have brought agencies in to do it when we've done job fairs. So it sort of varies depending on who we have doing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Don, could you give me clarification, if you can go back to page 3, on the DMV pool? And I just need to know, does DMV, notify you if, say, over the weekend or something, if they get pulled over, DUI or?
A DUI would come to us through the subsequent arrest record to the DOJ.
Okay.
So any arrests,
so when would you use the DMV pool?
That's for our bus drivers. We pull to see how many points they have.
Okay, but do you follow up, in case there was a speeding ticket or anything?
Our bus drivers, we would.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious. I mean, that's something I can probably go home and ask Gene, but I just wanted to know what our practice was.
If a bus driver is released from service, we actually report that to the DMV.
Oh, okay.
Of all of these, of all of our positions that are classified, there's licensure through the different consumer affairs departments. We would report if we had a labor action against an employee and they were dismissed. We would let their licensure know for those specific ones that I listed there. There's the examples, but there's more. Bus drivers, if we released somebody, we would notify DMV.
Okay.
What about coaches that are driving the vans with the kids? They get DMV pulled?
We don't pull DMV, but we do DOJ.
But they're driving the kids in vans, and we don't pull the DMV?
Right now, we don't. That's not our practice.
I'm kind of feeling like maybe we should be doing that.
We should, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if we're not putting them on buses and we're putting kids on vans with coaches that could potentially have something with the DMV, I mean, I feel like parents would be kind of cringing if they didn't think that we had some DMV pools with people who are driving kids.
Yeah. I have
Well,
a page
if
on
we go a
coaches,
step
so
further,
I'll make a note on that.
even insurance, I know that previous company that I worked for and the company that I work for now requires that I have vehicle insurance. I don't know how that works here, but if they're driving a van, you want to make sure that they're insured.
Okay, I'll make a note of that.
Okay.
So I have that, page 9 is all coaches, so we've got,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I was like, well, we were talking
I got
about
it.
DMV.
I went to page 9, I wrote a note down.
I
so-
would have gone there, but I was,
Okay,
since we were on that topic.
Okay. Okay, so I'm ready to go to classified, or certificated, unless there's any more classified questions. I want to point out a very large difference before I change the page, though. If we have a situation where we were to release an employee for inappropriate behavior, and they're a classified employee, when we release them, there is no agency or licensure short of the ones that require one. So for example, a paraprofessional, a yard duty, a food service worker. If they were to do something that is short of a misdemeanor or a felony, there is no way, if they applied to another district, or if it happened in another district and they applied to us, unless they put on their job application they worked in Folsom, Cordova, if we release them for cause, there's no way for that to follow them, okay? Certificated, that's not the same case. In certificated, because we have a commission that puts out credentials, if there's a person released from our district, or we're in the process of releasing them, and they resign, we still turn in our paperwork to the commission, and they're able to take action. So statewide, students are protected with our certificated employees. There's no vehicle to do that currently with classified. So that's a big difference between these two positions. So I'm going to go to certificated now and talk a little bit about how we go about. Did I miss a slide? Let me see some here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So recruitment and selection of certificated. Oh, that's why I skipped a page. We post on a different format. Most teachers in California are hired through EdJoin. EdJoin is an online job board that's actually created through, I think it's the San Joaquin County of Education. It's been around a long time. It's very robust. It's the industry standard. We have found, just for our purposes, for classified, it's easier to use the other job boards to hire. It's been more successful with classified, but with certificated, we hire through using EdJoin. We also use that for managers. We do find if we have a position in classified that is specific to education, for example, bus driver, we'll do both. We still will use EdJoin for classified, but primarily our certificated are on EdJoin. But we have also, for example, for nurses and for speech pathologists, we've used Team Taylor and cross platforms or use different job boards. So we've tried to use what helps us get the best candidates into applying for a job. So again, when someone applies to our district, they have to disclose if they've been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor. They have to disclose if they've been dismissed, non-reelected, or asked to resign. We ask them to provide 3 letters of recommendation, and we also ask if they need reasonable accommodations when they're being hired. Our personnel tech, again, screens for minimal qualifications, including the appropriate credentials through the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. If we have a high needs position, sometimes we will hire someone that doesn't have a credential, but we will screen them to make sure that they have the schooling in place that would allow us to place them in a temporary permit. And the board has seen those permits come through. We approve sometimes emergency or temporary permits for people that aren't fully credentialed. And we do screen to make sure they can do that before we hire them. Our hiring managers always are the ones that offer us in HR the candidate they think is most qualified. Our selection process is basically interviews, again, the same type of interviews that we do for classified employees. The hiring manager is the one who's asked to give us the most qualified candidate, then HR will process it. We do ask that there's 2 reference checks, and again, what we're looking for is a recent or current evaluating supervisor if it's a certificated employee. We also use that forced ranking matrix. So we can go back if someone says I was not fairly treated in the interview process, HR can go back, audit it, and make sure that the selection aligns with the choices of the people that were on the interview panel.
Don, question. So you had indicated the difference between classified and certificated, that if a teacher doesn't necessarily not convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony, but if something happened in a different district, it would be reported to the credentialing. And if they were to seek employment here, we would be able to know about that.
Absolutely.
What about a teacher out of state? Do all states have a credentialing entity? And if they do we check with the credentialing entity from out of state where they're coming from to see if there's anything there?
There's reciprocity with credentials. Every state has its own credentialing entity. That has not been our practice to do that. It has been our practice to call their most recent employer. So if someone comes from out of state, they're going to tell us that they worked out of state, because for reciprocity, they have to get a credential with us,
Right.
and we have to work with them. So they're not able to not reveal to us where they worked before. So we're able to go back and talk to their former employer.
Is there, would there be a reason why another state's credentialing entity would not speak to us if we called them to ask if candidate Jane Doe has anything on their credential?
That's a good question. I would think that when we tried to work with reciprocity, that's when we would find out. When our credential analyst works on bringing their credential forward, they check with that credentialing agency. So what we actually do, we do the same here, right? If someone in state is applying for a job, we check on their credential. That's what our technicians do. If they're doing reciprocity, they're checking with that agency to make sure their credential is clear, or what state it's in, and then based on that information, then we would apply for them to get a credential here. So that would be part of the process. We would be talking to that agency.
I think it also shows up because you have to apply for your California credential. So on your application for California credential, some of the questions are, have you worked in any other states? And you have to list any of that information. You have to put your credential number from out of state on your credential. So it would follow you even in that.
Oh, so the California credentialing agency would note it.
It would note
it. Okay.
We've had hires that were held up for 6 months because of these kind of issues.
Okay.
Where we thought, okay, we've got someone to start the school year. They interviewed really well, and then we're trying to get their credential, moved over from the other state, and that's when it comes up. And our technicians working with that state and with California on trying to get a credential reciprocity move through.
All right, so there's no loophole then. Okay.
Yeah, well,
All right.
that's the big difference, though, David, between certificated and classified.
Right.
Because if someone comes over and they're a paraprofessional in Arizona and they did something inappropriate there, they come here and they don't tell us they worked in Arizona or where they worked before, there's no way of knowing. There's no licensure for some of our classified jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President. Don, I just needed clarification on the letters of recommendation. Are they personal or from previous employers, or how does that work?
Well, on our letters of recommendation, we just ask for letters of recommendation. We don't necessarily, they have to be from a supervisor. When we actually go in and do a reference check, right, the reference check, that is required to be a current supervisor or their most previous supervisor.
Okay, so it could be either or if they're doing a letter of rec, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We haven't found letters of recommendation to be overly helpful in screening candidates, to be honest.
Right.
As a matter of fact, as I've talked to people in HR, a lot of HR departments are going away from letters of recommendation because they're just pretty much boilerplate and they're not helping them weed out candidates. It's the reference that's more important. And we recently talked about, as we hire managers, before we do our first round of interviews, talking to the managers and saying, we're going to do our calls to your reference checks prior to the first round of interviews. And that way we know that we're getting the best candidates into the first pool. Almost flipping it, right? Flipping it from doing that last to doing that first.
So have some districts dropped letters of recommendation?
They have. As a matter of fact, I was in San Juan helping them with hiring of the position like mine in San Juan this year, and they didn't require letters of recommendation.
It's just the reference checks?
Correct.
How much time would that save us if we didn't have to do that?
I think it saves the applicant more than us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. Sometimes on applications, and I'm not sure if it's on the ones that we use now, what happens if that question is marked no, as in, may we contact your previous employer or your current employer?
We call them.
You call me.
We call the employee or the potential employee and say, in order to move forward with your application, we need to talk to your supervisor. And if they won't let us, then we won't move forward. When we did our recent career fair, that was one of the hurdles that some of our employees had. They said, we don't want you to call our references. And we said, well, if we don't have a reference call with your supervisor, we're not going to be able to offer you employment. So that is definitely a line that we don't cross.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's even legal, but if you guys can do it, you can do it. So.
I have a
I'm
question.
just questioning it.
When you moved to Team Taylor over EdJoin, did you notice any difference in experience? Maybe not having experience in schools versus having experience in schools?
We did get candidates that in the past we wouldn't have seen, especially with speech pathologists. We had multiple speech pathologists who had worked in medical, facilities rather than schools. So in that line, yes, we did see some. Also with nurses, we have a couple different nursing positions, that we offer, and we need to see more people that were coming out of hospitals rather than schools. And they said to us, well, we didn't really realize that, you could get this job in a school, and it's a great opportunity, especially the speech pathologists. We did see a huge increase though in applicants, and Twin Rivers uses Team Taylor. That's who actually, they were here doing a presentation in an Access seminar that I was hosting, and they talked about using it and how it worked, and they helped us on board with Team Taylor. So we're not the only district in the Sacramento area that uses Team Taylor. I'm going to jump into onboarding for certificated employees. So what we do here is we confirm with CTC before we hire them. Then if they don't have their clear credential, I talked about, we will help them apply for temporary certification. We confirm their background check through CTC. We do a DOJ or FBI, and it's the same as we talked about with classified. Teachers or certificated employees are also required to have a TB clearance. And then we do, actually certificate and classified, we do an I-9 and Social Security verification. And then with certificated employees, because they've got the two-tiered system, to place them correctly on the salary schedule, we actually review their transcripts, but we review the transcripts really for salary placement, not for decision on who we're going to hire. And then just to talk a little bit about substitute recruiting and selecting, we do this a little differently. With substitutes, we again ask for them to disclose if they have any convictions, felonies or misdemeanors, if they've been dismissed or asked to resign from a position. We ask again if they need a reasonable accommodation. When we screen them though, we don't do interviews with our subs. We typically, a personnel tech screens them for their qualifications, make sure they've got the proper credential. A sub is an at-will employee. So we put them through training, and after they go through training, they will go into a classroom. If they don't work out, then we pull them right away, and we don't have to give them cause. So at this juncture, there's no interview process with our subs. If you apply for a sub position and you meet all the minimum qualifications, we'll put you into a classroom after you go through our training. As you can see with the onboarding process, there's a couple of different trainings that we do. It's the very bottom one. It's STEDI, and we receive that training process through the County Office of Education, and it's an online training module that our subs go through. We also do a one-day onboarding. So our subs, when they come to work for us, there's one day they come in, they meet with HR, we talk to them, and so it's not like they do an application and show up at a school. They actually do come in and do an informal meet with HR where they go through an onboarding process. And it's more of a group than a one-on-one. We also do reference checks on them, but they're definitely a little different in that we don't require that with our subs at this time. With volunteers, we have a couple different levels of volunteers. We've got what's called a Category 1 and a Category 2. We allow Category 1 volunteers to do things like come in and help for a variety of things, but they're not really allowed to be one-on-one with students or technically go on a field trip and drive. that would be a category 2. So with our category 1s, they go through the volunteer application process through Raptor. You'll see a Raptor device at every school in our district now. You put your ID in, and it immediately checks Megan's Law to see if you're a sexual predator, and if you are, the screen goes red and an email goes to the principal. We require that category 1s have a TB test, and we go through that process in HR. So HR tracks all the category 1 and category 2s. We treat category 2s almost as if they're unpaid employees. Category 2s, there's a database in HR. They go through Raptor. They do DOJ clearances as if they were a teacher. If there's a subsequent arrest, HR is notified. We also do TB testing on category 2s. The Raptor system is not limited to volunteers. It's also used for visitors. So visitors that come on campus, our policy is that visitor comes in, if they're only going to be there one day, they come in and they put their ID in, and that way we're making sure that we're not having someone who's a sexual predator come on campus. So these are some initiatives that we're doing to keep our kids safe. And then I do have a coach's slide here. We don't do DMV at this juncture, but if that's something we want to talk about, we can look at it. But you can see there's a lot that we do for coaches. There's a couple of things. There's a code of conduct agreement that all coaches must sign. We do the DOJ or FBI clearance. We do the TB clearance. We look at the I-9 and the Social Security if they're a paid coach. And then also there's a variety of different trainings that coaches need to be certificated in: concussion, CPR, mandated reporter, heat and illness prevention, sudden cardiac arrest, and CIF has a fundamentals of coaching certification that we put our coaches through.
Don, it's the same process, whether it's for middle school or high school, the coaching?
Yes, all
process?
coaches go through this. And
I just want to also throw out Mrs. Larrett's comment earlier that I think it would be worthwhile to look at the DMV records.
If they're driving?
So if there's a way we can follow up, just let us know if that's something we're looking at.
I'll look into that.
So Don, real quick, with the certifications and the coaches, do they turn that paperwork in, or can they have the option of uploading it to HR?
Well, yeah,
we talked about it yesterday.
Well, we have a lot of coaches, so we ask that they upload it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have athletic directors at every school that are there to help. We also have a district athletic director, Peter Maroon, and he helps also. So if any coaches are having a hard time uploading these, there's people out there that will help them. Their AD can help them, or they can call Mr. Maroon, and he'd be happy to help them.
I have a couple of names for you, Peter.
Okay.
And they can't start coaching until all of this is completed, correct?
We sometimes have coaches that need to still go through some of these certification courses. So they might be working through these if they're a new walk-on coach. Our head coaches definitely have all this done.
But like all the kind of stuff above the certifications, they all have to do all of that before they start coaching.
They're going to be DOJ cleared. They're going to be TB cleared. They're going to, those. And if they're paid, they have to do the SSN or they can't get paid.
Don, one last thing on that. Just back to the DMV idea, I'm thinking, are there other employees besides coaches that would be driving students without having gone through the DMV clearance?
Jim, do we have people driving students?
There's a multitude of requirements to drive students. So there's paperwork to be filled out. We have to know about the person who's driving his insurance. And then same thing in terms of their DMV record also would be a part of that. So it's not an easy task to drive students in our district.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
There's a form we have to fill out to drive the district vehicles. I've never filled the form out myself. I drive my car when I go between schools, but there is paperwork that you have to do if you're going to drive a district vehicle.
Mr. Maroon, did you want to add to that too?
The governor just signed a Senate bill requiring additional requirements for drivers. So anybody driving a district vehicle has to have proof of a driver's license as well as proof of insurance. That information goes to our transportation department, who does do a check on them and maintain that information. So if you're driving a district vehicle, you have to have that information. I don't know if they necessarily run a DUI check on them or anything of that nature, but anybody driving a vehicle, including parents, have to have proof of insurance and driver's license a valid driver's license. And for us, every 6 months, insurances change, so we have to have that information updated by parents every 6 months or so.
Thank you, Peter. And then I did want to share some of the things that we're doing now when we have new teachers. And there's a lot of numbers here, a lot of information on this slide about what we're doing to support new teachers. And I actually have given a presentation on this, which was about 10 slides. So this is 10 slides onto one. It just sort of shows how many new teachers we have, general ed and special ed, what different levels they're at. And then down below, you can see the teachers on special assignment. We have 6 that are dedicated to supporting new teachers. We have 26 mentors. We had a couple people come to the mic today and talk about being a mentor teacher in our district. We have 2 kinds of mentors. We have intern mentors. They're helping our teachers that are in the intern program. And then we also have induction mentors. Our induction program in California, you get a preliminary teaching credential. And then you have, during your first 5 years, you have to take coursework to clear your credential. And so we have a 2-tiered teaching credential system. And the induction program we offer through Folsom, Cordova, we actually pay for employees to go through that. They don't have to pay tuition. In the past and in smaller districts, what will happen is they'll go through a county office of education or another program to clear their credential. We actually clear the credentials with our employees here at no cost. And then they also earn credits while they're doing that. They can move over on the salary schedule based on the credits that they earn during the induction program. While you're in that induction program, which takes 2 years, you're assigned a mentor.
Don, really quick, sorry.
Sure.
Just a question on that. Do the intern mentors and the teacher induction mentors get paid?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a stipend.
And then is it the same? I did it when we were part of Sac County, so I was with Sac County. Are they getting paid the same amount that mentors did with Sac County now that we're in-house?
I'm not sure what the county mentors made, but as I recall, we were paying more a couple years ago when we moved it over. It was more than the county was paying. I'm not sure what the county's paying now.
Okay.
And then just to share the kind of supports, and I was out recruiting teachers this last week, and one of the things we talk about is how we support teachers in Folsom, Cordova. It's a little different than some of the other districts. I mean, having 6 teachers on special assignment whose sole job is to go out and support our new teachers is something that's rather unique about our district. Having in-house induction where we pay for employees that are new to the district to go through induction rather than them coming out of pocket and paying to go to a program, that's something that's unique to our district. Allowing our teachers to earn a stipend by being a mentor and working with our students, perhaps students at their own school, or teachers at their own school, that's something that's unique to our district. So there's a lot of things that we do for new teachers to support them that are very different than we're seeing in our surrounding districts. When we work with our interns, another thing that we have done is we actually are paying the intern tuition for some of our interns. So that's unique, where a lot of interns are out, they're going out of pocket, so they're getting paid to be a teacher as an intern, but then they're turning around and paying Sac State or another program for it. We've partnered with the Sacramento County Office of Education and Yolo County Office of Education for our special ed teachers that are going through the intern program, and so we get a reduced rate to pay for that tuition. And then talking about employee training, we do a lot of training also for our classified employees. However, all employees of our district have a whole litany of what we call required training, and we do this through a program called Public School Works. So this is training that you go online and you can do online. In this training, there's a lot of different modules, and you can go through and see this. There's child abuse reporting. There's the Homeless Pupil Act training, Healthy Schools Act training, how to use your email safely, not get spammed, sexual harassment training, and there's a couple of modules of that, bullying prevention, slips, trips, and falls, which helps our workers' comp costs, suicide prevention and response, bloodborne pathogen training, that's basically how to clean up bodily fluids safely if you're an employee, and then also the EpiPen usage. Our new employees have an orientation every month in classified, so we we hire most of our teachers at one time, and we do a new teacher training at the very beginning of the school year. However, classified staff, we may hire, as you approve them, you see them in the routine personal action form, we may hire 20, 40 classified employees in a month. So we do an orientation every month with our new classified employees. Our new, I mentioned it before, we call them guest or sub teachers. They are trained with the SETI training. And then the new training that's new to our district in 23-24 is we just recently did a child sexual abuse prevention training for every manager in our district. We just went through that this month. We're actually rethinking how we're doing teacher supervision and evaluation. So right now we're sending our managers through some training in partnership with the Teachers Association, and we're trying to think about how we can do a better job in supervising and evaluating staff. And so we're doing some training together with the leadership of our bargaining units and our principals. And then also we're looking at standardizing how we do our feedback from our training. So Christy Wilkerson has created a forum so that when we do professional development, we're able to compare different professional developments because we're using the same matrix to evaluate them. And then we offer now, and I'm hoping the board has seen it, but once a month you should be seeing a PD at a glance, which is all the different professional development that's being offered in the district. Looks like that. So this is the one for October. It shows all the different kinds of training that we're offering employees. Did I do that? How do I go back now? There we go. Thank you. And then just some highlights and some of the things that are coming up. We have not only teachers on special assignment, we also have teachers that are called instructional coaches at our schools. And so the instructional coaches are working at schools daily with teachers. So you may be a brand new teacher at a school and you have a teacher on special assignment that comes to visit you. You may have a mentor that's assigned to you, and you may also have a instructional coach working every single day at your school. So there's a lot of support that you're seeing for our new teachers in our district. And we have a lot of new teachers, so we need a lot of support. I wanted to highlight also one of the trainings that we do in our district, which is a de-escalation, or it's called also TCI, Therapeutic Crisis Intervention. That is a training that helps working with some of our special ed students in de-escalation. And that's one of the trainings that we provide. It's a 2-day training that we provide to our special ed staff, certificated and classified.
Dawn, is there a way for not just new employees to use the supports that are in place for the new employees? So if a teacher is in a new assignment, new grade level, is there district support outside of relying solely on maybe the co-teacher with that grade level at that school site? Or is there any of those supports that are available for all the new teachers for our current teachers that we're trying to retain?
So more experienced teachers would rely on the PLC model or their department model where they're supporting each other. So we did build into our school year this year, every Thursday for elementary schools, there's an earlier release time. So that's the time for our professional learning communities to get together. So if you are a teacher that's new to a grade level, you're meeting on Thursdays with everybody else in your grade level and collaborating and planning together. We also have the model of having the instructional coaches at many of our schools, so that instructional coach would step into that space. So we do have a couple of things. The TOSAs right now, I mean, we have about 150 new teachers. There's 6, so they're spread pretty thin, but they are, they all have a caseload of new teachers. So the TOSAs, the 6 TOSAs are focused on new teachers. It would be some of those other support systems for experienced teachers.
Mr. Ogden, I did have a question.
Sure.
Regarding the required trainings, I know this has been an issue in recent years. Is there a training pertaining to fentanyl and drug overdoses required for our district employees?
That's a good question. We don't have that as one of our required trainings at this time.
I think it's a required training for our nurses, though, isn't it not?
We do a training, well, we've done a training for all of our, and I don't know who did the training. So Betty Jo, do you know the details on the fentanyl training that we did in the Narcan?
I believe that Carrie Kay did the training for the Narcan.
Mm-hmm. With the nurses.
Yes.
With
Yeah,
nurses.
I
I
think
think
that's
administrators
right.
too.
Yeah.
I think site administrators too, as I recall. Yeah. It's not on here, but we actually last year did CPR training and the AED device. every administrator in the district went through training. So the AEDs that are at every site, administrators all know how to use them. I did want to talk about, sometimes we do all this training and you wonder, why are we doing all this training? Well, we do have just some numbers to share with you. When we have a complaint, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about complaints in a moment, but when we have a complaint, HR gets involved and, we have to investigate sometimes. We also have progressive discipline, which is an employee that's perhaps not engaging in a way that they should at a school. So last year we had 96 complaints that came to HR that we investigated and processed. We had 145 progressive discipline situations that we worked through. This year, as of day 45, so that's a quarter of the school year, we already had 46 complaints and we already had 63 progressive discipline issues. Just to give you the numbers, we're on track right now to have about 184 complaints, which is double last year. We're on track to have over 250 progressive discipline issues, and that's way too many. That's a lot of issues. And so we're hoping that the training that we've started with will fill in and help with some of these issues. But right now there's a bit of a challenge. But just to talk a little bit about progressive discipline, when I'm talking about progressive discipline, there's two ways you can look at when an employee's having difficulty at work. Sometimes they have what we would call a compliance issue. Sometimes they're having a performance issue. If they're having a compliance issue, that means they violated a rule, they violated a code or a law. They've actually done something that you should not do. Whereas a performance issue is they're not, whatever their job function is, they're not doing it accurately, they might not be doing it correctly, they might not be doing it at all. But a performance issue is more about helping an employee improve. So when we have a performance issue, that's not reflected in progressive discipline. That's reflected in their evaluation. We have a compliance issue is reflected in progressive discipline. So an example might be an employee swears at work, right? So you're not allowed to swear at work. We would write them up. You get a letter of reprimand saying, you can't use that language at school. If you do it again, we're going to go to the next level of progressive discipline. And so that would be an example of why we would use progressive discipline. With performance, if we had a teacher who was not doing an adequate job lesson planning, and their lessons were confusing and the students were having a hard time, and they were observed by their principal, and the principal noticed that the time wasn't being used like it should be during class, that would be addressed in their evaluation. So that wouldn't be in progressive discipline, that would be evaluative. So there's sort of two different paths we go down when we're looking at employees and trying to support them. And so I just wanted to sort of differentiate those two. With discipline and complaints, so like I was sharing, this is not talking about someone who perhaps is having difficulty in their job. If someone there's a complaint against someone because they're violating a rule or a code or a board policy, what we do is we start an investigation. And in our investigations, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We typically get written statements when we do an investigation. Well, and if it's students who are witnesses or adults who are witnesses, we ask them to write it down, and then we will do a formal investigation where we'll talk to people and do interviews. We do have opportunities sometimes to use video surveillance. For example, we have videos on our buses. So we don't spend our day looking through videos, of buses for improper behavior. However, if we have a report of improper behavior on a bus, we're able to go back and look at the video on the bus. And we do have cameras also outside of our schools, and so sometimes we've actually used that for surveillance when there's been an issue or a complaint. Sometimes there's documentary evidence. For example, someone might write an inappropriate email, and so we were able to look at that, capture that email and talk about that. So then, in the investigation, we're trying to determine the facts, and often there's one person says one thing, one person says the other. So we look to corroborate, between one person's story and the other and get to the bottom of it so that we can do the proper and appropriate discipline based on the behavior. There are situations that require us as mandated reporters to report things to Child Protective Services. So that is part of our investigation process to determine if it's risen that level. And if it is, HR advises people to report it to Child Protective Services, and we make sure that that report happens. When we're doing an investigation, our end product is typically some kind of written document, and that ranges. It could be, we investigated the situation, and we might give a notice to the person that complains, saying we investigated the issue, and we didn't find any cooperation, and so there was no action taken. And the other extreme is we could have an employee that we're going to terminate because of their behavior, or take them to a Scully hearing, which is basically the process you go through to terminate. So we would write a statement of charges for an employee, and which would be grounds for termination. And that eventually would go to the commissioning department of if it was a certificated employee. However, if someone's terminated as a classified employee through that same process, there's nowhere to turn in that report. So they still have the opportunity to go work in another district if they're classified. And then following up, what we typically will do is after we've done our investigation, we've written up however we're going to do it on that whole spectrum of from no action to termination. We will follow up and make sure that we're complying with all the different corrective actions that we've suggested, and making sure that we're following board policies and procedures. There are different kinds of complaints that have statutory or regulatory processes that we have to follow. So when a complaint comes in, what HR sometimes does is we'll look at this complaint and we'll say, okay, what kind of complaint is this? For example, it might be a sexual harassment complaint. If someone tells us, I've been sexually harassed, then we have to follow a specific procedure for a sexual harassment complaint. That's called a Title IX complaint. We have a couple of people in our district that are identified as Title IX officers who lead those complaints. I lead those complaints if it's a sexual harassment against an employee. Dr. Huber leads that if it's a sexual harassment complaint against a student. And then we follow, there's actually board policies and ARs regarding how to process this complaint that are in line with Ed Code. We also have what are called general employment discrimination complaints. So if there's a complaint of discrimination, we follow a process that is outlined in board policy 4030. And if there's a complaint that has to do with violating a specific law or a local, state law, federal law, those are what are called uniform complaints. There's another procedure that we follow for that, which again is different. And then there's general complaints. General complaints don't fall into those first three. And if it's a general complaint, then we follow that as a formal complaint. The one complaint I don't have on here is we do have complaints which are grievances, which are within the bargaining unit, but I didn't put that in the scope today. So just to give you an idea, here's a Title IX complaint. This is the process we need to follow if we have a sexual harassment complaint. So I have a slide deck like this, and I'm not going to go through all of these complaints, but just so you know, if you want to refer to it, we have to follow these statutory processes for Title IX. For discrimination, this is a statutory process, and this one includes timelines. For uniform complaints, this is the statutory process. It includes the statutory timelines. And then for general complaints, this is sort of how we process through those. Now, I think an interesting piece to note is that if it's a Title IX complaint and we get to the very end and we finished our investigation and the complainant doesn't agree with us, there's actually an appellate that we go to that's outside of our district. Excuse me, they called it the appellate decision maker, which is usually an attorney that we would contract. If it's a discrimination complaint, and they don't agree with the outcome of our investigation, then the board would hear that the board is the final arbiter if it's a discrimination complaint. If it's a uniform complaint and we get to the end of the investigation and we've come to here's our finding as a district, and they don't agree with a uniform complaint, which is a complaint saying we broke a law, then that goes to the California Department of Education for their appeal. So we will go through a process with a uniform complaint. And the last thing we say is if you don't agree with our finding, then you need to apply for an appeal with CDE. So all of these different complaints have different outcomes if you want to appeal the final decision. The general complaint, which is this last one, this one goes to the board last. So the last person to look at this would be the board if we had a complaint that we were not able to resolve at a lower level. So there's lots of different complaints. I just wanted to share with you what happens, though, when we do have a complaint and sort of the communication plan. So if an incident is witnessed and reported to a site administrator, we do, if needed, we report it to CPS and law enforcement, depending on the severity of it. And the board has passed board policy, and we have ARs now that dictate which complaints go to law enforcement and which ones don't. So we have guidance on that. We didn't used to have that, so that's been super helpful when the board adopted that last year. We also have the need for a site administrator to take appropriate action depending on the safety that's needed based on the complaint. And so sometimes it involves separating the parties. Sometimes it involves calling for additional resources through the district office, sometimes or SROs, or it could be just calling the parents and having them come help. The site administrator, when they are dealing with one of these issues, will call HR, and HR will deploy the resources that are needed, but sometimes they'll call Dr. Huber's office, or they'll call Scott Meyer's office, depending on the type of complaint or issue that they're trying to resolve. Site administrator is responsible for contacting the parents. So if we do have a complaint that is that's ongoing, even though HR might be doing the investigation, we ask, because the site administrator has a better relationship with families than we do, we ask that they reach out to the families and they're the liaison with the families. On some rare occasions, HR or the superintendent's office or Dr. Huber's office or Betty Jo Wessinger's office, or sometimes our offices may reach out, but typically it's the site administrator that follows through. Now, sometimes when we are doing an investigation based on a complaint, an employee may be placed on administrative leave. If that is the case, depending on the situation, we may notify the public. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It just depends on what happened. Sometimes it could happen because they're put on leave because of interaction with another employee. It could be because of interaction with a student. Lots of different reasons that an employee might be put on administrative leave. So our process is to look at the situation on a case-by-case basis, determine who we communicate with, because we don't want to broadcast if we put an employee on administrative leave to the community, because it might tarnish their reputation when it might not be a true claim. So we are very disciplined and reluctant to release information to those outside of those immediately impacted by that behavior. So if there's behavior that warrants putting someone on administrative leave, our practice is to contact those immediately impacted, unless it's a safety issue and we need to go to a larger audience, which we will do. And then the communication department, Angela's office, works hand in hand with us, and we have like timelines and procedures that we go through every time that we have a situation where we need to communicate out. We have a process and an order of releasing the information when we have complaints or we have situations where we maybe put someone on leave, or we've got discipline going on that needs to go out to the broader community.
Are those timelines included in here, or would you be able to provide us?
The timelines for communicating?
Yeah.
It's an order of who it's released to, not
Oh, okay.
necessarily a timeline.
Okay. Are there
But
certain?
I could share that with.
Are there? I think we see it in the emails, but are there certain times where there are specific timelines that are followed, and then what are the checks and balances in terms of making sure that everyone has been communicated with?
Well, our practice is basically we work with Angela's office and the communications department. And we talk to them about when we're going to release information, because the timelines for us are really the school day, right? The school day beginning and end of day. So a lot of times we're looking at that timeline as far as releasing. Dr. Kaligian is always involved when we're releasing information like this and talking about how we're going to release it, what the timeline is going to be, and then what is the order of releasing that information.
Don, and the board is always notified of these incidents, correct? I mean, I know it will come out like a confidential thing, but I just want to make sure that we are always kept in the loop.
Yeah. You know, and sometimes, I mean, there's a lot that's going on in a day, and sometimes when we're working through these processes, you know, I try and make sure the board and Dr. Collegian are updated, you know, do the best that we can. Sometimes when we're working on the process, we're focused on the process, and the communication to the board might not be as fast as we want it to be.
Right.
Sometimes when we're working through issues, we're not sure exactly how broad the audience is going to be on an issue. And so we try to, anything that we think is going to be a broad audience, we make sure the board knows beforehand. Sometimes, you know, if it's a minor complaint at a school, the board won't know about that one, right? But if it's something that's going to be broader, we definitely need to make sure the board's aware of that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not caught off guard.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've had situations where even we don't know, right? Where an incident happens and it's not reported for multiple days. So then when it happens, it's you know, when we find out about it, then our next step is, you know, communicating through the chain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments from the board? You know, one of the things that struck me earlier on an earlier slide, you don't have to go back, but I think it was around slide 3 or 4, regarding letters of recommendation and references. I took a note when you said we don't find letters of recommendations particularly useful, and I guess that kind of makes sense, because if you're going to go ask someone for a recommendation or a letter of recommendation, you know that they're going to write something nice about you.
Right.
Whereas reference check is a little bit, you're having a conversation with someone else, and it's not written.
Right.
So I can understand why you indicated that references were useful and the letters of recommendation were not. And what's interesting is when I asked the question, have other districts dropped letters of recommendation, you said some have.
Mm-hmm.
So hypothetically, if we were looking at hiring a position and another school district was looking at hiring a position, and the applicant applied to our district and the other district, but we're requiring 3 letters of recommendation and the other district is not,
Mm-hmm.
presumably the other district will probably end up hiring that person before we do, because they're going to be having to run out and find 3 letters of recommendation and get responses so that they can submit it to us, whereas the other district can just streamline it. So I kind of wonder if you don't find them particularly useful, perhaps we should get rid of them so that we can make our hiring process a little bit smoother.
Yeah, I think, well, it's something we've definitely talked about, and the point you're making is a really good point. If we're creating a barrier for hiring good people, you know, why not remove that barrier? Because right now, honestly, it's not a screen. It doesn't help us screen employees.
Yeah.
So it's not doing what we think it would be doing. So if it's a barrier for hiring, you know, maybe that's a barrier we need to remove.
It might fall under the category of just because we've always done it that way, doesn't mean that we always have to do it that way. Let's see.
Can I just follow up on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, please.
And didn't you also say too, that when we had our last job fair, that was kind of delaying things because the letter of
It was the
recommendations?
reference checks.
The
As a matter of
reference
fact, we had so many people that we were reference checking. We brought in a retired administrator to help us to call former employees. We had Dan Anklam in here helping out for a couple of days in sort of a boiler room situation, calling to make sure that, you know, the people's supervisors said they were a good employee before we hired them. So I think the calls, definitely, I would not ever do away with that with, you know, the previous employer or the current employer. But as far as the letters, I honestly think that might be something that we could consider dropping off of our list.
Then kind of what I heard from myself and my colleagues was perhaps staff might look into the issue of DMV checks for
Will do.
coach drivers, and perhaps take a look at FBI DOJ for everybody. Is another thing that I heard. You know, the presentation I thought was wonderful. I think it's a really good presentation. I almost wonder if we should find a place to tuck it in on our website for people to look at, because I know these types of questions come up a lot, although I kind of feel like you're missing a slide 21.
Okay.
And I think the slide 21 could be misconceptions or frequently asked questions, because, I think the questions we often hear, and I'm not going to point to any particular incident that has happened, but how often do we hear, how come that person wasn't fired?
Yeah.
Well, because there's a due diligence process. We have to investigate. We just don't have the ability to just turn around and fire somebody. But we often hear that, right?
Yes. Yeah, we do.
The other question that we often hear is, well, how come you didn't do a criminal background check? Well, I think the answer is hopefully obvious, but it's a question that should be answered, because how often do we hear people asking that question? The answer is, well, we did do a criminal background check, but if they've never done anything to be convicted, there's nothing to look at. And I think sometimes the public needs to be reminded, we do criminal background checks, but if this is the first time they've ever been caught, then there was nothing to find. So, and maybe there's some other questions, the frequently asked questions that you could provide answers. But I think something like that as a slide 21, if we use this deck again or find a place for it, might be useful to have that as well.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you.
Why don't we take out, I know it's just discussion, but I'll take it out to the audience. Is there any comments from the audience? Welcome.
I know I come up here a lot. I was also thinking that they had one at one of the board meetings that I came to that I think that should be on this also, is where you go first to complain. Because I know that a lot of people go to the wrong places and they're like, but nobody is listening to me. And well, where did you go? Or they go directly to the board when they really should just go to the principal. Yeah. So I think that should be also on there.
Slide 22.
That.
Hey, Don, maybe this should be for public information, or maybe it's something that the public should know, but when you're doing reference calls, are there certain things that you can ask? Are there certain things that you can't ask of a former employer? Like if you're, calling a former employer to inquire about an employee that you're getting ready to hire, i.e., let's say, obviously, how long have they worked? But you can't really ask any other deep diving questions.
We have a format that we give our hiring managers, and so there's actually questions we have them ask. And so they all ask the same questions.
Such as?
There are questions, would you hire this person again? Why are they leaving employment with your district? So we have specific questions we ask.
Okay.
Any reason that we shouldn't hire them?
Anybody online?
President Reed?
Yes.
Carrie Kay is available online. She can answer the fentanyl training questions and the Narcan question.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Carrie, welcome. You there? She's unmuting. You're there, Carrie? We're not hearing anything. Well, if she comes through, let us know.
Is she talking?
Maybe could she type the answer to you?
She has in a number of texts. I can read them to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So all of the nurses and health assistants have received the Narcan training, and the Narcan training is voluntary, so there's a number of additional people, and it varies by sites. So at sites, our school nurses work with site admin and offer the training to all staff who are willing volunteers. There are many staff on each campus who are trained, from classroom teachers, yard duty, admin, clerical, bus drivers, and more. Each campus has multiple doses on hand, as do our FCUSD buildings, such as maintenance and transportation. And then the fentanyl training that we did last year was one pill that can kill. And then we just had a training. Were you able to go to the training we did this week, the fentanyl training? There was an informational a training one evening this week. It will be provided, the fentanyl training will be provided again this year. And the people who receive that training, that's voluntary as well. And the parents, students, and staff, DT and Scott, who hosted the training this week, it was recorded, and so it will be available for anyone to view. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. All right. So I guess that wraps up our discussion on that item. And special thanks for Board Member Clark for asking for that presentation. I think, oh, he's not here. Well, anyway, thank you anyway. I think this was a useful presentation that, and I think we all learned something on this. And so particular thanks to staff and Don for putting that together. All right, let's see. That takes us to superintendent's report.
Well, thank you. I also want to acknowledge all those that helped put on the drug awareness and cyber safety workshop this last week. That we also had parents attending and staff attending. And I think, part of the takeaway is more students and families and community need to hear the messages. So a question came up about how do we continue to get that message out, as Mr. Millajor asked, and putting, recording those sessions and putting them on our district website, but also hosting these informational awareness sessions at our school sites are equally as important, so students are hearing it. And I don't think we can say it enough times about the dangers of drugs and cyber safety. I understand last year we did the Arrive Alive assemblies at Folsom High and Vista Del Lago, and we talked to the presenters to see if we can schedule them for this year for all of our high schools, and at some point maybe even our middle schools. But again, I want to thank all those that helped put the evening on, for the speakers that spoke from Sacramento County Sheriff and DA's offices, and all those that attended. So thank you for that. We also hosted the District College Fair this week. That was open to all high school students throughout our district. We stagger where we hold it. One year we'll hold it in Folsom, 1 year we'll hold it in Rancho Cordova. This year it was at Folsom High School and well attended. So thank you for all those that helped put that on. And then this week, or this next week, is a 6-year celebration for Cordova High's 60th anniversary with a homecoming week and a game on October 27th. And I also want to acknowledge the drama department at Cordova High School, who put on a great production of Clue. And they have a new drama teacher and coordinator, and doing a great job over there. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And that takes us to board member reports, and we'll start with the student board members. Board member Millajor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to preface this by saying I speak on behalf of Van and myself. And so tomorrow I just want to shout out that open mic night at Vista is tomorrow. I'm in Vista's guitar program, so I hope you can attend. And this event basically just showcases the talent of Vista Del Lago's guitar program, and it's led by my awesome teacher, Mr. Martini. He's been running the program since the school opened back in '07. And this program is just one of many memorable experiences that I have experienced in this district. And a lot of these programs and experiences would not be possible without my teachers. And so to me, right now with this discussion involving the 2%, what this district currently doing is, at this point, they're just providing teachers with a classroom and desks, and the rest is left up to the teachers to provide. We can do better. And back in August, when I was buying school supplies, I spent over $100 on notebooks, pencils, and the essentials needed for any student to perform well in school. And it just makes me wonder how much money and resources that these teachers are putting in probably even more, to provide for all their students. According to the California Department of Education, there are a minimum of 36,000 instructional minutes in a kindergarten classroom, 50,400 instructional minutes in a 1 through 3rd grade classroom, 54,000 instructional minutes in a 4 through 8 classroom, and 64,800 instructional minutes in a 9 through 12 classroom, all across a minimum of a 180-day school year. And it makes me wonder if this sub 53,000 salary that we are quoting for our new teachers is worth all these instructional minutes that we are making them work. Teaching is a profession that teaches all the other professions. And so this district will get what we pay for. And if we want to pay and retain our quality educators, we have to pay them a quality salary. Thank you.
Thank you. What time's your presentation or the performance?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. in which, whereabouts in Vista, which building?
The Black Box Theater.
Black Box, okay. Thank you. Let's see, Board Member Merrill.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to begin my report acknowledging, I'm gonna talk about the high schools just because I feel very strongly with that. I'd like to begin my report acknowledging Folsom's arguments for a new high school in Folsom Ranch. I do agree. I acknowledge that there's a large population growth in the area and that people have moved to Folsom Ranch expecting a new high school in that area. Right now, I believe that Rancho Cordova deserves a new school in our area, in the Rio del Oro area, hopefully a new high school. Cordova High School is celebrating its 60th homecoming this year. And that's crazy. That's over half a century. I feel like that's a long time. What's also astonishing is that Rancho has not received a high school in that amount of time, despite the city's growth. Obviously, I do believe that we should not make this an argument between Folsom parents and Rancho parents or Folsom students and Rancho students. However, I do need to recognize the polarities between the two communities felt within the student population. I have friends in both cities. I went to elementary school in Blanche Sprentz, which is in Folsom, right next to Folsom Middle School, and then I moved to Mitchell in 7th grade. So I have connections in both cities and all the high schools. And so I know how the Folsom students talk about Rancho Cordova and Cordova High School and the Cordova High School students, and it's not the best. Rancho Cordova is often referred to as poor, looked down upon, or ghetto, and that's not because the school is physically worse. I mean, we have a beautiful campus. I think it's one of the most beautiful that I've seen. It's just because of the city as a smaller population and is less developed than Folsom. Not that it isn't developed, it's just less developed than Folsom. This rhetoric does affect Rancho Cordova students. They know about the inequities between the two communities at a young age. I knew it when I moved to Rancho in 2016, I'm pretty sure. It kind of makes a mindset within the student population and that they go to a worse school than other students in their district. I'm going to Cordova High School, it's the bottom of the three. It kind of breeds that negative mindset in students, especially young students who go to Mitchell Middle School, Mills Middle School, or even the elementary schools. Putting money into the Rio del Oro area, whether that be a high school or an elementary school, is essential in bettering my community and the reputation that my community has within the district and the area. It will also show Cordova residents that the money that they put into the district is paying off in their own area and not being dumped into somewhere else that is already thriving and does not need as much attention as their own community. I still strongly believe that a high school is deserved in Rio del Oro, but I do acknowledge Folsom's side of the argument, and I'm not going to personally make a final mental decision until more information about Folsom Ranch's needs for a high school comes out. So I'd like to further the discussion in the later board meetings. I feel like this is a good topic to be spending time on instead of the calendar, That took a while. One last thing, you can catch me at Cordova's homecoming game, which is a whiteout, tomorrow against Natomas. Go Lancers. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Let's see, Board Member Lofthouse.
I have no report this evening.
Okay. Board Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I share the same sentiment with Board Member Meljor and Merrill on everything that you guys have mentioned, especially the high school and Rancho Cordova, and of course our teachers. The past 2 days or 3 days have been kind of rough. You know, and I have to share the story. I travel a lot, and I usually sit in the airport and I see people running to their gate, and I always thought to myself, nah, that'll never be me. Last night it was me, and along with 4 of my colleagues, we were running through the airport trying to make it back home. But to say that, we actually had an opportunity to visit a couple of HBCUs, one, to do some recruiting. Our goal is to, one, diversify our employment base, especially schools in Rancho Cordova, and try to find teachers of color. And we found a couple of good ones. But the thing is, and I thought about it as I couldn't sleep last night, we were saying that we're a great district and we need to recruit and retain. And I'm going to leave this really short. Yeah, we need to retain. And that word retain is just, getting to me. We need to take care of business here at home with our teachers. We need to make sure that we keep our good teachers. And yes, bring those teachers of color in. My only hope is that when we go back, we start some serious talks and we build upon the good relationship we have, and we need to trust each other and work together. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I'm running on fumes and I'll probably fall asleep on the dais in a minute. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Board Member Lurette.
Yeah, I went to the college fair. It was awesome. I think my daughter might have found a college, so I was really excited about that. But yeah, it was really well attended, very organized, so I always appreciated that and having that as a resource for our students. I also attended CLU. Acting was amazing. The sets were spectacular. I mean, the sets were like above. I took my youngest and she was literally talking about it for like the last 2 weeks and wanted to go every single night that it was there. So really appreciated all the hard work and effort from that department. I did want to say that we did have a lot of public comments that came through today. And I would just encourage both sides to really try to limit the deficit language that's kind of being used. Some of the comments were pretty rough. On this side, that side. So I would encourage, as we kind of navigate through the next few months and having these discussions, that we really kind of keep the language in mind on how we're talking about either side of the district, either city of the district, because I think that it's really not positive for us to try to be disparaging to either side as we navigate through these, and we try to keep it as positive as possible. It's a very sensitive subject. And it's high emotions, so it's like, I understand that, but some of them are pretty highly charged comments. So I would just encourage everyone as we kind of go through this process to just keep that in mind. And that's it for me.
All right, Board Member Hui.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. Yeah, number one, I wanted to thank everybody who put work into the college fair was that Tuesday? It's a great event, so thank you to all the counselors and staff that came out and helped out with that. And in a similar vein, just wanted to thank Mr. Clark, Mr. Ogden, and the other staff that were at the HBCUs over these last few days. I'm impressed you guys are still awake right now. Impressed in about your presentation, considering the amount of sleep I'm sure you got last night. But appreciate the work you guys have put into building connections with the HBCUs that we are working with, and certainly hoping for and looking forward to seeing, maybe one or two of those candidates coming out here this year. Either way, I'm really happy that that's work that we're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Vice President, if I may, I do want to recognize our team that did make the trip with us. Miss Betty Evans from UCAN, and obviously Mr. Ogden and Dr. Peace and Miss Kayla Yates, who is a teacher at Cordova Meadows. And then also Miss Melanie Smith Williams who accompanied us. But like I said, yeah, I don't know how we made it getting in at 2:30 in the morning and my wife waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm a light sleeper, so I know we're all running on fumes, but I appreciate the work that the district did put in for the slideshow. You know, we did have some students that were interested. There was a gentleman who was a freshman who said, well, when can I sign up? Well, you got to obviously finish your 4 years, but there was some excitement, so I just wanted to add that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I also would like to acknowledge all of the communications the board has received on the issue of SFID 3 and our future school developments there. You know, I do appreciate the passion that the residents from both Folsom and Rancho Cordova have on this topic. You know, I mean, obviously parents are very concerned about the education of their children. I definitely recognize that. And it's personal. I get it. But I also would echo the sentiments of Board Member Lorette. Let's, you know, we know the struggle. We're trying to figure it out. Staff is trying to figure it out with their recommendations. No decisions have been made. We're trying to thoughtfully think of how we can spend the limited funds that we have, which were supposed to go a lot longer, a lot further, but unfortunately it was $2007, not $2023. I just want both communities to know we hear you, and we're doing our best to figure out a solution that I don't know if, this is one of those situations, I don't know if we'll ever have a solution that everybody will be happy about, but, or, you know, I often like to say, maybe if everybody's not happy, then maybe that's the solution you go with, but the bottom line is we're trying to figure this out. And you know, we appreciate your input, but we are one district. We're not two cities, we're one district. And we need to just remember that. We are Folsom Cordova Unified School District. But I continue to encourage your involvement, your input. And if anybody has any outside of the box ideas, I think we welcome them. I love outside of the box ideas. And there are some that, you know, just, you know, I'm sure there's many that we haven't even thought of. I heard actually one outside the box idea from a resident earlier today that no one had raised. And so I appreciate that. So keep it up, and we'll get through this. And I think when's the next facility meeting? January?
We're looking at January, yes.
Okay, so more to come. So I also want to echo the superintendent's comments on the drug fentanyl informational session that we had in this room earlier this week, and the cyber safety. I really, you know, both of those presentations were wonderful. And I actually, you know, you could spend 2 or 3 hours on each topic, each subject, rather than put them together. But we put them together. And one of the things that I often wonder is when we have those types of presentations, actually it was a decent turnout. You know, obviously you always hope for more. You know, I'd love to fill up like, you know, Cordova's auditorium or Folsom's auditorium with every single seat filled with parents, because it's that important, these discussions regarding issues related to drugs and issues related to cybersecurity. But you know, everybody's busy. I mean, I get that. We did record it. Is that going to be shared with the public, the recording? You'll be sharing tomorrow, okay. So you know, that's something that I would encourage the public to watch from home if you have the opportunity. But I also wonder, you know, and I know it's a lot to ask because there's so much going on at the school level, but, you know, could we have school-wide presentations or class level presentations if the school is too big, or, assemblies, where we have the exact same speakers that spoke go to Cordova High, go to Folsom High, to go to Vista Del Lago, and provide the exact same presentation to a school-wide assembly or a class-wide assembly. Will it get through to every student? No. But could it get through to enough students that we could save a life or multiple lives? Yes. And I think that's worth spending a couple of hours the first week of school while we're doing the getting to know you type thing. Why not have a school-wide assembly the first week of school on these important topics? Something, obviously for, not the board level to make that call, but I would probably encourage staff to at least think about maybe some opportunity like that. And that's all I got for tonight. So thank you all very much. And then that takes us to advanced planning. Let's see, the next board meeting is on November 2nd, 2023. You have the 12-month calendar there for your reference. And then that takes us to suggested future agenda items. Does anybody have any suggestions to add to the list?
Board President?
Yes.
I don't know if maybe earlier tonight we had agreed on this, but we had talked earlier about looking at the calendar policy again. So I just wanted to make sure that it's something that gets on the future agenda item if my colleagues are all in favor of that.
I concur. Yeah. All right. That sounds unanimous. Okay. Anybody else? All right. And we took care of all of our closed session items in the first closed session, so there is no need to recess back to closed session. So that takes us to adjournment. And unless there's any objections, we will adjourn by unanimous consent. Hearing no objections, we're adjourned.